Chapter 889. A bottle of enchanted 84 disinfectant? Immortal Toya took the godly weapon with both hands, and unexpectedly didn't feel any ripples in his heart, because he felt that he was already used to it. Only Ling Jinren could do this kind of shocking and incomparably basic operation. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was also shaken by the appearance of this bottle of disinfectant. The truth was that he had already forgotten who had created him, and just felt that this bottle of disinfectant which had suddenly appeared was familiar. When Devil Gut Fungus Lord had still been a tiny bacterium, his spiritual intelligence hadn't matured yet, and he had no idea where on earth he had come from. This was why Devil Gut Fungus Lord had thought that he was a bacterium born with a golden spoon in its mouth, and was the true fungus of destiny. But what Devil Gut Fungus Lord never expected was that the moment this enchanted 84 disinfectant appeared, there would actually be some kind of resonance between the enchanted and the enchanted, which simultaneously stimulated Devil Gut Fungus Lord's memory. In Devil Gut Fungus Lord's mind, the tranquil and fair face of a teenager unexpectedly appeared. He had short hair that fluttered lightly, and there was a languid look in his eyes, as if he would never wake up. Looking at his face, he didn't look like a threat at all, and was just a harmless teenager. But this teenager gave Devil Gut Fungus Lord a great shock and a sense of crisis. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already drenched in a cold sweat when he recalled this image, and all his attacks were interrupted. The instant Devil Gut Fungus Lord's thoughts paused, the millions of immortal bugs in the air became a headless swarm of flies, and started to tear each other apart. Seeing this, Porcelano hurriedly retreated. He pulled back dozens of steps in a row, and didn't dare rush in recklessly. Just now, he had almost lost his life because he had been too aggressive and rash. At the same time, his eyes focused on the bottle of disinfectant in Immortal Toya's hand. He was convinced that it was because of this bottle of disinfectant that this ferocious Devil Gut Fungus Lord had stopped his attack. Porcelano, brother, what is this bottle of magic weapon that looks like disinfectant? For a moment, Immortal Toya actually didn't know how to answer this question. A magic treasure that looked like disinfectant? No, this was a freaking bottle of disinfectant. The supermarket had a special price of 29.88 yuan per bottle, and it was the kind that bought one get one free during the special season. Immortal Toya glanced at the packaging for this bottle of disinfectant. The huge yellow words, "Free gift," were particularly eye-catching. This enchanted bottle of disinfectant was also a free gift. Generally speaking, gifts were only bundled together for promotion purposes when they were about to expire. But since it had already been through Ling Jinren's hands, this bottle of disinfectant, which was about to expire, had clearly reached its peak. Sigh, it had actually been touched by Ling Jinren's hot and beautiful hands. Staring at this bottle of disinfectant, Immortal Toya actually felt a little jealous. Impossible. Impossible. On the other side, Devil Gut Fungus Lord, whose memories had been awakened by the disinfectant and who remembered his origins, could not accept the truth before him at all. He clutched his head and screamed in shock. Immortal Toya sighed. He had already opened the bottle of disinfectant, and a pungent smell wafted out, making Devil Gut Fungus Lord feel even more pain. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was clearly at a distance, but the smell of this bottle of disinfectant was already effective on him. You want to kill me? Devil Gut Fungus Lord gritted his teeth and did his utmost to deny his origins. I was born the strongest. I don't have any master. My devouring power is invincible in the universe. Given time, I'll definitely become the Supreme Devil Lord. Devil Gut Fungus Lord shouted, the power of Outer Tao. He condensed all the 3 powers of Outer Tao that President Bai had already collected into his body. The 5 great elements gathered on his body to form an elemental glass armor, and all kinds of dazzling lights superimposed on each other. It was like a bunch of cheap light effects that a renminbi player would spend a lot of money on. They might be cheap, but they looked very awesome. In addition, the power of reverse polarity also appeared. A Tai Chi disc appeared on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's glass armor, which was the symbol of reverse polarity. Porcelano turned pale with fright. He even has this kind of Outer Tao? This was practically the Outer Tao that thousands of cultivators dreamed of. Obtaining it was like having the power to defy the heavens and change fate. Even if you were on the verge of death, with this ability, you could resurrect on the spot with full health. Is it Michio Alliance? Tell the other hero cultivators to stop. This isn't an opponent they can deal with. Porcelano shouted. Porcelano was very clear about the current situation, facing such an enemy. The rest of the hero cultivators wouldn't be of any use at all. Even he had almost been seriously injured by this enemy. If they recklessly charged over without a plan, it would be tantamount to sending themselves to their deaths from thousands of miles away. The current situation was already very messy. More people would only add to the chaos. Michio Alliance responded, "It's too late. In 1 minute, the hero cultivators will reach the front line." Porcelano grit his teeth. Bastard. 1 minute? Hearing their replies, Immortal Toya nodded. 1 minute was actually enough, and enough to punish this devil-gut fungus lord several times over. Porcelano, little brother, let's retreat. Your bottle of disinfectant is very strong, but it's up against the power of reverse polarity outer Tao. There's no way you can kill him. Not necessarily. Immortal Toya shook his head. He poured out a drop of disinfectant, and like guanine throwing out sweet dew from a jade bottle, he sprayed it in devil-gut fungus lord's direction. BZZT. This glittering drop of divine liquid released extremely powerful spirit power, which actually carried a hint of annihilation. Porcelano's expression changed dramatically with fright. At the same time, the color of heaven and earth changed with this drop of divine liquid, and a huge vortex appeared in the air. The spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant actually directly tore through the sky. Porcelano's jaw dropped in shock, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This was actually the spirit power contained in a drop of disinfectant? He felt that the spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant was dozens of times stronger than his. No. This was no longer disinfectant. It was a drop of super divine liquid, one of a kind. Sensing the danger of the divine liquid, devil-gut fungus lord knew that he was powerless to resist, but relying on the power of reverse polarity outer Tao, he still laughed wildly. Want to kill me? I'm an immortal being. BZZT. As soon as he said that, the divine liquid burst out with energy again, and a powerful purifying power swept across the area. In the next moment, devil-gut fungus lord's eyes were filled with astonishment as his elemental glass armor and the disc of reverse polarity outer Tao directly exploded on the spot. The power of this drop of disinfectant was above that of outer Tao. Chapter 890. This drop of divine liquid shook the air, and the world fell silent as the ripples spread out. Even Immortal Toya was shaken by the power of this drop of divine liquid. After throwing it out, he stood motionless in the air for a long time, completely shaken by this scene. It turned out that all along, Ling Jinren was more powerful than he had imagined. Of course, Immortal Toya knew that Ling Jinren was a top expert, but after personally experiencing the formidable power of this drop of disinfectant, Immortal Toya completely understood. How the hell was this a top expert? This was simply a god. It seemed that Ling Jinren and the domain of the gods had a very close relationship. Immortal Toya secretly worshipped him in his heart. This wasn't a technique that people in the world below could use at all. In Immortal Toya's view, this was already far above the venerated immortal realm, and only the legendary experts of the domain of the gods could trace the realm above the venerated immortal realm. Whether it was Wang Zhen or Lu Qingyi, Immortal Toya had already come into contact with them. These two were experts from the domain of the gods, and their abilities were extraordinary. But what Immortal Toya didn't quite understand was that, judging from Ling Jinren's performance, he seemed to have a very limited understanding of the domain of the gods. Could it be that Ling Jinren wasn't from the domain of the gods? Or perhaps, there was still a realm above the domain of the gods in this world? Immortal Toya pondered this in his heart. At the same time, in Porcelano's eyes, Immortal Toya's action just now was like a miracle, so, he's an expert. Porcelano had to admit that he had been blind. He had thought that this outsider from Huaxiao Nation wasn't strong, and had never thought that the other party would actually be able to take out such a magic treasure. Furthermore, after taking out that drop of divine liquid, which was clearly so powerful, the other party was actually unmoved at all as he stood in the air, as if he was doing something insignificant. This was a serious expert. It was very obvious that this expert was already a veteran of hundreds of battles. To remain unmoved by such a powerful fluctuation was the style of an almighty. It was just that there weren't many famous experts in Huaxiao Nation. That was because every nation had a different constitution. Huaxiao Alliance didn't have a hero cultivator mechanism like Mixiao Alliance. Huaxiao Alliance's cultivators might be more famous locally, but they had always lacked international fame. Of course, the one who had recently risen to prominence was that great death-courting senior grenade-throwing senior immortal, the #1 true venerated in the world. In Huaxiao Alliance, Porcelano only knew the 10 generals, and really didn't know anyone else. Buzz. This drop of divine liquid penetrated everything and landed on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's chest. In just an instant, the divine liquid directly melted into his chest. Devil Gut Fungus Lord let out a heart-wrenching scream. He couldn't stop the power of this drop of divine liquid at all. At this moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord felt like a piece of ice being cooked over fire. Endless steam was evaporating from his body as he hugged his head and shouted, "You created me, and now you want to destroy me." He had already accepted the fact that he had been created because Devil Gut Fungus Lord realized that he could not resist this destructive power at all. "If you had been wholeheartedly kind, I might have spared your life. But you've stirred up a storm in this vast world, so naturally I can't let you live." Immortal Toya stared at Devil Gut Fungus Lord, who was about to die. At that moment, only his upper body was left of him. In the distance, more and more hero cultivators were rushing over, many of whom still had mud and scars on their faces and bodies. They had all rushed to the front line as reinforcements after hearing Mixiao Alliance's order. In the end, just as they were about to arrive, a sudden burst of overwhelming spirit power had scared some hero cultivators so much that they couldn't steady their auras and fell from the sky on the spot. This was how the bruises and scars on their faces and bodies had come about. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." A burly blonde man floated in the air with his arms crossed. He was thin to begin with, but the moment he arrived at the front line, his muscles suddenly inflated as if they had been filled with air. Even Porcelano couldn't help bowing when he saw him. Mr. Olu. This was the SSS-level hero known as the Light of the City, Olu. He was also Mixiao Alliance's most famous hero cultivator. The only SSS rank. But when he arrived at the scene, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already dying. Mr. Olu sighed in disappointment. "It seems that there is no need for me to do anything. But this is good too." As the Light of the City, Mr. Olu was actually very tired every time he carried out a mission. His special spell caused him to have to eat hair to gain power. Every time he ate a strand of hair, his power would double from his original base. Given how dangerous Devil Gut Fungus Lord was, Mr. Olu originally thought that he would have to eat all the hair this time. A bald head was the symbol of his strongest combat power. It was also the origin of his hero codename, City Light. Porcelano, this Huaxiao little brother isn't to be trifled with. Mr. Olu should have already sensed it just now. Mr. Olu nodded. That was indeed a very powerful force. None of their Mixiao Alliance cultivators, including himself. To be able to unleash such powerful psionic energy, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had already been reduced to ashes. On behalf of the group of hero cultivators, Mr. Olu and Porcelano took the initiative to greet Immortal Toya. "Brother, may I ask, who on earth are you?" Immortal Toya, "I'm from the Office of Strategic Deception." The hero cultivators were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that this was the new sect that had recently produced a true venerated cultivator. "Then may I ask, Your Excellency?" Porcelano wanted to continue asking. Immortal Toya cupped his chin and thought carefully. He felt that it wasn't appropriate for him to reveal too much abroad. "Immortal Toya, I'm not sect leader. There's no need for sect leader to take action against this kind of evil." "Then may I ask, brother, what is your Daoist name?" Immortal Toya quickly replied, "I don't have a Daoist name. But please remember my name." "Brother, please speak." "My name is Audjua." That night, Audjua, who had already washed up and was about to go to bed, turned on the TV, and the female anchor reported eloquently, "According to the latest news our reporters have received, the evil that invaded Michio's border today has been wiped out by the Office of Strategic Deception's cultivator Audiobook. Who on earth is this Mr. Joie? Let us hear what the other hero cultivators have to say about him." Audiobook rubbed his eyes and repeatedly confirmed the news on the subtitles. That wasn't right. When had he gone abroad? Chapter 891. News of the demon-slaying battle taking place across the sea far away on Michio Nation's border spread faster than Audiobook had imagined. After seeing the news broadcast on TV, the battle-hardened Audiobook could more or less guess what had happened. Someone in the Office of Strategic Deception must have been carrying out a mission, and had given him the credit again. But the problem was that he was a golden core stage cultivator. Now that everyone was bragging about him, Audiobook immediately felt the pressure on him increase tremendously. In short, Audiobook knew very well. "I'm afraid I won't be able to rest tonight." After the midnight news was broadcast, the phone in Audiobook's apartment was ringing off the hook again with all kinds of congratulations. He checked the WeChat moments he had posted a few hours ago. The meaning of that sentence was actually very simple. There was only one simple word: tired. Of course, this wasn't because slaying demons was tiring, it was purely because he felt that ever since he had become the general administration of 100 schools and his reputation had risen rapidly, he felt a little powerless. But it just so happened that Audiobook's retirement age was still very early. He had just taken this position, and he would have to work for at least another 500 years before he could retire. After the midnight news broadcast, Audiobook's message instantly received almost a few hundred likes. As expected of Director Joie, he can vanquish evil and defend the Tao across the sea. I saw it all. That Michio hero cultivator's utterly convinced expression when he was interviewed. No one has ever made the City of Light show such an expression of admiration. Director Joie is young and promising. Not only does he manage the student studies, he also eliminates evil and upholds the Tao outside of work. He's a role model for the younger generation. I heard that the evil spirit also destroyed the Chrysanthemum Island of Immortal Toya, the head of the Office of Strategic Deception's Elixir team. I have some movie resources here to celebrate Director Joie's righteous deed. Director Joie can contact me at any time. After Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island is rebuilt, we'll use this as the theme and use Director Joie as the main character to make a movie called 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Tenli Chrysanthemum. Audiobook blushed at these praises. Because this matter really had nothing to do with him. But since the Office of Strategic Deception had already decided on this, he had no choice but to take the blame. Audiobook felt very tired. He was just a scapegoat for someone else. But now, he had become the Walk King of the sect. August 22nd, Tuesday, the 9th day of the summer vacation. When Audiobook went out that morning, the main entrance of the staff apartment building was already surrounded by a large group of reporters. They didn't dare break into the building directly, so they waited for him at the intersection in front of the building. Audiobook had to pass by on his way to work. When Audiobook appeared at the door, he immediately knew that something was wrong, but it was already too late to turn back as the reporters had already seen him. Director Joie is out. After saying that, a reporter opened his briefcase, from which several telescopic eyes were released. They automatically floated in the air and aimed in Audiobook's direction to film him from all directions. These large mechanical eyeballs were now the hottest interview magic weapons in the reporter circle. As long as the photo of the interviewee was put in, the telescopic eyes would automatically identify the target and track the interview. However, this kind of magic treasure was very expensive to make, and a small newspaper couldn't afford it. Audiobook stood at the door, and several telescopic eyes had already taken the initiative to float over from a distance. Looking at the platform logo on the far-sighted hand, it was actually a toilet lid platform. The far-sighted hand played the interview questions which had already been recorded. Can Director Joie reveal the details of how you defeated the evil spirit? I heard that the evil spirit was very strong, and Michio Nation's missiles couldn't hurt it. As a golden core cultivator, what kind of magic weapon does Director Joie have to defeat it? Audiobook was stupefied. Details, how would he know about this? He did have a magic weapon to defeat it. It was his shifu Audiobook. But what could he say? He didn't dare say it at all. AI. Audiobook sighed. The reporter in the distance heard Audiobook's answer. Love? That reporter was instantly stunned beyond belief by this simple yet powerful answer. It could only be said that as expected of the most famous cadre in Songhai City who had arrested the most evil spirits and demons. The toilet lid platform reporter who used the telescopic eyes cried out in surprise. Director Zhua said that his magic weapon to defeat the evil spirit is actually love. There was a hubbub of voices. The group of reporters was also stupefied. Love? For a moment, the reporters on the road were silent as they pondered what on earth this meant. The toilet lid platform reporter sighed with emotion. It seems that the reason why the evil spirit was eliminated this time was because of Director Zhua's love. Director Zhua used the precise word, love, to vividly express his boundless and fearless love in the face of the evil spirit, his lofty ambition and his great determination to use love to influence the world, and his beautiful dream as a good cadre of the people. Love the people, love his work, he used his love and passion to influence the evil spirit. So that's how it is. Many of the reporters were dumbfounded for a moment. He quickly picked up a small notebook to record something. Audiobook. At that moment, the reporter started to ask again with the telescopic eyes. What I said should be correct, right? Is there anything else Director Zhuo would like to add? Audiobook was at a loss for words. The toilet lid platform reporter cried out in surprise again. Me? Many of the other reporters who were taking notes looked up. Brother, may I ask, what does this mean? The toilet lid platform reporter took a few seconds to think, and then immediately knocked himself on the head. I'm such a blockhead. It actually took me so long to understand Director Zhua's meaning. Director Zhua's me is clearly, I for everyone and everyone for me. One to me, this is Director Zhua's magic weapon for victory this time. Director Zhuo wants to tell us that when we encounter danger and difficulties, we should be like him, fearlessly sacrificing myself and spreading love to every corner of the world. So that's what he means. What a talent, brother. Brother, you're awesome. At that moment, the telescopic eye's voice came again. Thank you for your brilliant answer, Director Zhuo. Our interview is over, we won't disturb Director Zhuo anymore. If we do, we'll be criticized as well. Watching the telescopic eyes disappear into the distance, as well as the group of reporters who had scored full marks in Chinese reading comprehension, Audiobook fell into a long silence. His heart was so tired. Chapter 892. That day, Audiobook took sick leave and didn't go to work. After the group of reporters dispersed, he texted Zhong Lang. Little Zhong, I'm not feeling well today. There's been a lot of work at the office recently, sorry to trouble you. Audiobook had always been a very polite person. Although Zhong Lang had only been working with him for a few months, and the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City had become increasingly busy as Audiobook's reputation rose, Zhong Lang didn't feel tired at all. Audiobook was his superior and his brother, and the two of them were actually very close in private. Brother Zhuo, if you're not feeling well, leave it to me. Take care of yourself. You have to go to work, and you also have to vanquish evil in passing. It's really hard on you. Zhong Lang was watching the morning news when he texted Audiobook. The female anchor of the morning news rebroadcasted the Devil Gut Fungus Lord incident, and now the whole world knew that Audiobook had gone abroad to deal with someone. Back at the apartment, Audiobook put down his briefcase, took off his suit and shirt, and went to the fridge to take out a bottle of leather wine. This wasn't beer that ordinary people drank, but genuine, leather wine, with the slogan, "Be naughty and happy," written on the bottle. This leather wine was made from fermented spirit herbs, and could make people feel happy when they were vexed. But leather wine was still wine, in the end. It wasn't good to drink too much. Usually, Audiobook would just drink a bottle after work to relieve his stress, but now he took out all the wine in the fridge because he felt particularly irritable today. For some reason, Audiobook felt that he was living less and less like himself. Furthermore, he was very unhappy. Bottle after bottle of leather wine went down his throat, but it still didn't alleviate his gloominess. When the alcohol level in his blood reached saturation, Audiobook lay on his back on the sofa and let out a long burp before he threw his head back and howled, unbearable. Ma Fei. Who's Ma Fei? Forget it, who cares who he is, unbearable, I feel so unbearable. Audiobook felt that he was losing more and more confidence. He lay on his back on the sofa. The leather wine in the bottle had already been used up, and he casually tossed it aside with a headache. The strong alcohol had already soaked through every vein in his body, and he fell into a deep sleep. At noon, Audiobook still hadn't woken up under the influence of the alcohol. At this moment, in his staff apartment, the sound of the doorknob turning came from the outer door. A slightly chubby man in black clothes barged into the apartment. I've already successfully infiltrated. The man in black clothes said softly. His mask was a communication treasure that could be used to contact external members. It wasn't easy to break into the staff apartment, but as a famous assassin of the dark web, Kong Rui still completed his mission. He rarely did this kind of infiltration work, but the big boss who hired him offered a high price that he couldn't refuse. After finishing this last job, I will retire. At the door, Kong Rui sighed. He took off the cloak that was draped over his shoulders and covered his entire body. Then, his figure and aura completely disappeared. In the living room, Audiobook was sprawled out on the sofa, drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. Kong Rui looked at the wine jars scattered on the coffee table, and his entire body tensed up to the extreme. This person didn't go to work today? Furthermore, how could an expert who had just exterminated evil spirits be drunk by a few jars of leather wine? He didn't believe it. Kong Rui's first reaction was that Audiobook was most likely faking it. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead as he observed Audiobook's movements from a distance, and unexpectedly didn't dare act rashly. A true expert was even more difficult to deal with when he was drunk. Inside the cloak, Kong Rui was drenched in sweat. As long as he didn't act, he was sure that he wouldn't be discovered. The cloak he was wearing was a world-defying magic weapon that had been passed down from his ancestors. Although his realm wasn't high, it was this cloak that had given him the courage to travel all over the world for so many years. But now, Kong Rui was faced with a difficult problem. He was wondering whether he should act against Audiobook. If this person was really drunk, then so be it. But if he was faking it, Kong Rui might not be able to keep his life. This task, it was more arduous than he had imagined. The request he had received was to retrieve a strand of Audiobook's hair. Although he didn't know what his employer was going to do with Audiobook's hair, it had sounded like a simple task at the time. All he had to do was break into the apartment while Audiobook was at work and look for a strand of hair. But now, because he couldn't determine whether or not Audiobook was faking it, Kong Rui felt a lot of psychological pressure. After breathing deeply for several dozen seconds, Kong Rui decided to bypass Audiobook and avoid making direct contact with him. Although the person in question was at home right now, directly going over to cut his hair might be life-threatening. Judging from Audiobook's habits, this person didn't bother with trifles. Maybe he could find a clue to Audiobook's hair in the bathroom. But when he arrived at the bathroom, Kong Rui was dumbfounded once again. He couldn't imagine that a man's bathroom could actually be so organized and so clean that not even a speck of dust could be found. Kong Rui bent down and touched the sink. There wasn't even a strand of hair in it. It looked like this director Zhua basically didn't lose his hair when he showered. And even if he did, he had a habit of cleaning it up. Why? Kong Rui felt very hurt. Why did this man have so much hair, and why was he so strong? If even the bathroom was so clean, it looked like there wasn't any hair in the bedroom. The wine jars that were strewn about outside were just Audiobook's occasional indulgence. To be cautious, he went to the bedroom to confirm that there was no hair, and finally set his sights on the drunk Audiobook in the living room. So I have to do it myself? Kong Rui swallowed, took out a pair of small scissors, and slowly crawled over to the sofa. Just as he was about to make his move, Audiobook suddenly roared, "Do you know? Do you know, you're fat and I'm thin." Damn it. He'd been discovered. Kong Rui put away the scissors, drenched in sweat. He was clearly wearing a cloak, but the other party had actually guessed that he was fat. Sure enough, this guy was in disguise. In a panic, Kong Rui hurriedly fled out of the apartment, but at that moment, Audiobook actually flipped over and caught his foot. Ah! Kong Rui, who had just been about to flee, screamed and abruptly fell to the ground. His forehead made intimate contact with the coffee table in front of Audiobook with a loud bang. This coffee table had been a gift from grenade-throwing senior immortal on the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception. It was made of a special material that was extremely hard, and even a soul formation cultivator wouldn't be able to break it easily. Thus, Kong Rui passed out with his head covered in blood. As one of the Office of Strategic Deception's key leaders, his home had actually been invaded. This was actually quite a serious matter. The first thing he did was call Fang Xing. Fang Xing was the leader of the Goon Squad, and the Office of Strategic Deception's interrogations were handed over to him. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception's Goon Squad was now connected to Warden Liang of Songhai First Prison. In other words, the Goon Squad's interrogations were legal. Okay, Brother Zhua, I'm coming. On the other end of the line, Fang Xing's voice was still as sunny as ever, like the spring breeze and rain that moistened one's parched lungs. Audiobook nodded. I've got him under control. I'll be waiting for you. Audiobook had already confiscated the scissors and cloak Kong Rui had used to commit the crime. Furthermore, to be on the safe side, Audiobook had obediently tied Kong Rui up with an immortal binding lock. Audiobook had won this immortal binding lock when Songhai First Prison's Mahjong squad had gambled on it. The last time Audiobook had visited the prison, the Mahjong squad had been worried that they were short of one player, so Audiobook had personally played. Warden Liang hadn't believed that Audiobook would win, so he had used an immortal binding lock as a bet. After that, this immortal binding lock had been Audiobook's. It couldn't be helped. When it came to it, Audiobook was a human koi fish. His luck was just that good. Hands on his hips, Audiobook smiled in satisfaction. He then opened the curtains in the living room to let in the sunlight. Audiobook recalled that beautiful dream from last night. Unfortunately, when would he be able to pinch his Shifu's face in real life? Elsewhere, in the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling also gradually opened his eyes. He had had a very strange dream. He had actually dreamed of Audiobook. But it wasn't a prophetic dream, but a real dream of the mind. The real dream of the mind was used to maintain order. In many cases, it was a small heavenly Tao spell that Wang Ling had unconsciously activated. Usually, this spell would only work on the people around him whom he thought were important. Its main function was to adjust one's state of mind. In any case, one's state of mind was a very important factor that could affect a person's work, studies, and so on. If one's state of mind couldn't be adjusted, it would most likely turn into depression. Nowadays, many celebrities had died bearing this kind of psychological pressure. They were usually regarded as pretentious and fake. When these people needed care the most, they silently endured all kinds of violence and buried their pain in their hearts. Thus, in this situation, companionship was a very important factor. But the real dream of the mind had a very big drawback, and that was that Wang Ling didn't know what he would do in the dream, including what had happened. After the dream, he would completely forget everything. The real dream of the mind was a spell that could help teammates adjust their state of mind and treat depression. In the dream, Wang Ling mostly reflected what the master of the dream wanted him to look like. He would appear in the dream in the form that the master of the dream wanted him to be, and help the master of the dream recover his state of mind. As for last night's dream, Wang Ling didn't remember it at all. If it was a prophetic dream or an ordinary dream, Wang Ling would definitely remember it 100%. It was only in the case of the real dream of the mind that he would forget the dream. Dog 2 had been lying on the ground the whole time and wagging its tail. It looked at its little master Ling with a strange expression in its eyes. For some reason, it felt that little master Ling's cheeks were very, very red, as if someone had pinched them. But Face couldn't help but sigh at this scene. It could be assumed that little Master Ling was also at this age, when he was full of vigor. Although this guy usually didn't speak or even smile, as his closest pet, Dog 2 had already figured out his little master's temper like the back of its hand. Therefore, it guessed that its little master must have had a sultry dream last night. Chapter 894. Thursday, August 24th. It was the 11th day of the summer break. The preliminary results of the interrogation of the dark network assassin, Kong Rui, who had broken into Audiobook's staff apartment were already out. At first, Kong Rui vowed not to confess, and was very stubborn. Warden Liang and Audiobook looked at each other and smiled. Without saying anything else, they directly sent Kong Rui to the mahjong room. In less than 5 minutes, Kong Rui had confessed to everything he had done. But there was a limit to what Kong Rui knew. The only clue Kong Rui knew about the employer who had spent a lot of money on Audiobook's hair was the bank account number from which the money had been transferred. Audiobook had someone check it, and discovered that it was a foreign private bank account. It was an international bank, and they had no right to access the other party's personal information. Warden Liang, Kong Rui's dark network is very expensive. Brother Zhua, you have to be more careful from now on. I don't know why the other party wants your hair. Could it be for a DNA paternity test? Do you have any nouveau riche great-grandfathers or great-grandmothers abroad? Audiobook broke out in a sweat. You're thinking too much, old Liang. I was born and raised in Hujin. I grew up carefully under the care of my family, and I never left the house. It was only because of my good grades that I was admitted to Songhai City that the school here made an exception. Could it be some kind of enemy? Or a crime you committed as a child? I'm not sure about an enemy. I definitely wouldn't have an enemy when I was a child. Our Zhua family's group motto is not to go out at night. My parents always scared me when I was a child, saying that if we Fujian people went out, we would be caught and eaten by the people of Hudong. Speaking up to this point, Audiobook's expression was a little helpless. But speaking of enemies, it was hard to say whether or not he would have any now that he was on the job. As the saying went, a tall tree attracts the wind. Audiobook understood this principle. He had been in the limelight in the last few months, shouldering a lot of blame and provoking a lot of eyes and ears. There were always people who envied and hated him, who wanted to drag him down and kick him when he was down. There were a lot of people like this in society, and most of them weren't straightforward. Like snakes, worms, rats, and ants, they couldn't see the light and could only hide behind a rock to be a lowly fence-sitter. And he had seen more and more of these types of people since taking over at the general administration of 100 schools. He knew who these people were, but he always pretended that he didn't care. He knew that if he showed the slightest displeasure, he would fall into the trap of these despicable people. Who was investigating him? What did they want his hair for? Audiobook felt that he had to keep an eye on this matter. At noon that day, Fatty Luo brought him good news. The initial forging of Jinka's scabbard was a success. In order to create a suitable scabbard for Jinka, Fatty Luo had gone through a lot of trouble just gathering the materials. He had suffered a lot for the 1,000 dried bone. But to synthesize equipment, collecting materials was always a troublesome matter. At this time, he had to bring out the perseverance of the Monster Hunter players and the hard-working spirit of the Onyx Soul players. Fortunately, the result wasn't too bad. Fatty Luo's success rate in making the scabbard was surprisingly good. He had made a total of 3 custom-made scabbards for Jinka, each made of the same material but slightly different in size. In the afternoon, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal personally came to Fatty Luo's shop to take a look, and found that the doorsill was gone. It was only later that he learned that Fatty Luo had torn down the doorsill of his own shop because it had been made of Amateus wood, the main material for the 3 scabbards. I remember that Amateus wood is a great treasure passed down in Brother Luo's family. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stunned by Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. For my Lord Jinka, this little sacrifice is nothing. Fatty Luo waved his hand with an unperturbed expression. Come. Senior Immortal, please take a look at these 3 scabbards. He opened a rectangular box, which contained Jinka's scabbard. Fatty Luo proudly introduced them. The first scabbard is the little family Jasper Amateus scabbard. The mouth of the sword is designed with a Type-C interface. If Lord Jinka wants to put it in from the front, it doesn't matter if he wants to put it in from the back. The second scabbard is the silky Enjoy Amateus scabbard. This scabbard is made of Amateus wood on the outside, and 1,000 dried bones and lubricating stone on the inside. When Lord Jinka puts it in, he will experience a noble feeling, like a moisturizing facial mask, and will enjoy the silky smoothness of the scabbard to the fullest. The third scabbard is the Virgo Compact Amateus scabbard. The mouth of this scabbard is on the small side, which gives Lord Jinka the feeling of wanting to resist but also welcoming. When Lord Jinka stabs it in, the protruding thread inside the scabbard is also a big selling point. Furthermore, the thread inside changes every day, so Lord Jinka won't feel bored. Fatty Luo said. Then what does the third scabbard have to do with Virgo? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help asking. Calling it Virgo just sounds more civilized. As long as you remove the word Virgo, it's actually a lot easier to understand, Fatty Luo answered. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was so startled by the design of these three scabbards that he almost dropped his melon seeds. Fatty Luo's words froze him in place for a long time. He really didn't know how to feel about these three scabbards, so he could only change the subject and ask the next question. As expected of Brother Luo. These three scabbards are all good, but they seem to be different in size. Is there anything special about them? There's nothing special about them. These three scabbards were made for Lord Jinka, but I don't know what he likes. But I don't know Lord Jinka's preferences. Some sword spirits like looser scabbards to be more comfortable, while others like tighter scabbards. It's just like wearing Durex. I wonder if Senior Immortal likes to wear loose ones, tight ones, or super thin ones? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo was lost in his masterpiece. Ever since I met Lord Jinka, I've fallen deeply in love with him. Being able to make a scabbard for Lord Jinka is already my life's greatest wish. Now that I've made this scabbard, I don't know if Lord Jinka will like it, but I have no regrets. But I think that no matter what, Lord Jinka will definitely be able to sense my feelings, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wiped at his sweat. He didn't want to dampen Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. Maybe. Brother Jinka will be very moved when he sees it. Of course he will. Fatty Luo's lips curled up. I designed these three scabbards so that Lord Jinka will be so comfortable that he won't want to come out. Maybe he won't even want to move once he's in the scabbard. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version, M. Chapter 895. Although these three scabbards weren't to Wang Ling's liking, in the end, they were Fatty Luo's sincerity. Wang Ling couldn't directly refuse him, so he entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to deliver them to his house. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal arrived at the Wang family's small villa that day, a rare sight that only appeared once in 100 years. The old man, Mother Wang, and Father Wang were all sitting on the sofa watching the same TV series. It was a TV series about a fight in ancient times. Do you know or don't? It's you who attack and I take. The TV series told the story of three cross-dressing bigwigs who returned to their mansion after undergoing sex reassignment surgery in Thailand, where they fought openly and covertly in order to find a good man to marry off. Because of the bizarre plot, winding plot and complicated emotional lines, it attracted a lot of young men and women, as well as uncles and aunties, and had become a phenomenal piece of work for the past month. It even looked like it would surpass Yanxi Palace strategy and Rui's legend from a few months ago. Seeing this scene, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that the coffin of Wei Ying Luo, the new lightning Dharmaraja who had attracted heavenly lightning to kill the old concubine, was probably going to collapse soon. After they entered, Mother Wang didn't have time to entertain them at all. The TV series was on, and it was an acquaintance, so she told Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to help himself in the small villa. Little Lei. The tea is in the kitchen. If you want to drink it, make it yourself. Just treat it like your own home. I've also brewed the broccoli wine for you. It's in the basement. If you want to drink it, go get it yourself. Unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time, Mother Wang had already thoroughly regarded Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal as one of her own. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was overwhelmed by this invitation. Although he was now famous as the #1 true venerated in the world, he was still just a little brother in the Wang family's small villa. Now that these three old seniors were sitting on the sofa watching a TV series, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered it deeply. What kind of TV series could attract these three old seniors, who had seen through the world of mortals and lived ordinary lives in seclusion in the suburbs? To this extent, it was worth thinking about. When I go back today, I'll finish watching this TV series. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal made up his mind. The truth was that the TV series was only halfway through, but ever since the Office of Strategic Deception's rise, more and more film companies had come to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to cooperate with, planning to rent some of the office's scenes for filming. It was for this reason that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's phone now had the contact information of a lot of big shots in the film and television company. If he wanted any TV series resources, he could just ask for them directly. By the time the toilet lid was cut for half an hour every day, it would be too late. There was no end to comprehending the heavenly Tao. Moreover, it had to be done quickly, the faster the better. Brother Ling. Before they went upstairs, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shouted. With his penetrating gaze, Wang Ling saw Grenade-throwing going upstairs with 3 condoms in his hands. Actually, this was the scabbard. However, Fatty Luo's introduction of the 3 scabbards was too dirty, and people couldn't help but think the wrong way. Wang Ling felt that he had still been a pure person before entering number 60 high school. Now, he was being led astray by others. Almost every class had a few dirty demon kings. For example, in their grade 1, class 3, the biggest dirty demon king was Dopey Gua. Apart from gossiping, this guy's biggest hobby was driving. Moreover, he would brake suddenly for no reason, catching people off guard. When they entered the room, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the scabbard on Wang Ling's desk and saw that Wang Ling was looking up some information. What is Brother Ling looking for? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Little Master is looking for information on scabbards, woof. Lying on the floor, Dog 2 yawned lazily. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, as expected, Brother Luo's 3 scabbards aren't good enough. Little Master said it wouldn't be good to undermine his confidence, so he still accepted them, woof. Speaking up to this point, Loopy Toad sighed. Actually, it's not a problem with the scabbards. Fatty Luo even took out his family's ancestral Amateus wood, which shows how much effort he put into this. But it won't be easy to get Lord Jinka to stay quietly in the scabbard. If you don't believe me, take a scabbard and try it on. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. He casually pulled out a tight scabbard and tried to approach Jinka, but in the end, he felt a strong resistance. Forget putting it on, he couldn't even get close. See? Dog 2 said, Lord Jinka is used to being naked, so he's not used to having a scabbard on him. His relationship with the scabbard is like skinny to a pokeball. You can't force it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Dog 2. But Little Master Ling also said that Lord Jinka's true power can only be unleashed with a scabbard. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, why aren't you saying woof anymore, Brother Dog? Dog 2, F***K woof. I've been a dog for so long, and I still think it's more comfortable to say gua. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, finding a scabbard for Jinka wasn't something Wang Ling had done on a whim, but had been planning for a long time. He had planned to take advantage of his free time during the summer break to get this done. No matter how custom-made or remodeled a sword scabbard was, it definitely wouldn't be as good as the original. Fatty Luo had custom-made the scabbard using Amateus wood as the main material, but these scabbards could only be used as spare tires at most. What Wang Ling wanted to find for Jinka now was Jinka's original scabbard. As everyone knew, Jinka was a peachwood sword that Father Wang had bought at the flower and bird market for 998 HNY. It was just that Jinka hadn't awakened at that time. Jinka's origin had always been a mystery. Wang Ling had quietly investigated a lot of clues over the years, but could only roughly confirm that Jinka was the Lord of Sword Spirits, while he knew very little about Jinka's origin. Even those sword spirits who called Jinka Lord Sword Master didn't know why they had to prostrate themselves before Jinka. According to the testimony of the sword spirit of evil sword god's heaven-cleaving sword, evil sword god's fear at the time had been completely subconscious, like a knee-jerk reaction. When he had sensed Jinka's formidable power, the words, Lord Sword Master, had slipped out of his mouth for no reason at all. Thus, for those sword spirits, it was like an ordinary citizen of a kingdom kneeling in salute to the king. Everything had seemed so natural. At that moment, Wang Ling was using Book of Sage Immortal to flip through some information. It was information from 10 years ago. Father Wang couldn't even remember when he had bought Jinka back then. He didn't even have the receipt, and could only remember a rough outline. Thus, Wang Ling could only use Book of Sage Immortal to search for information on Father Wang's visit to the flower and bird market. He wanted to investigate the origin of this flower and bird market, as well as the stall owner who had sold Jinka back then. He would start from the source and help Jinka find his scabbard. Chapter 896. August 26th, Saturday. It was the 13th day of the summer vacation. Zhuo was in an unusually good mood today, because he had received an invitation from his chief Shifu Wang Ling to accompany him to the flower and bird market from more than 10 years ago to look for clues about the scabbard. Wang Ling had already pretty much investigated the person who had sold the scabbard back then. There were stall numbers in the flower and bird market, and the shop that had sold the scabbard back then was still in business today. Zhuo drove with Wang Ling. As soon as they entered the door, they saw a silk banner saying, 10 years of gold medal shop, hanging on the door of the old shop. The flower and bird market had undergone a lot of changes in the last 10 years, and for this shop to be able to stay afloat for 10 years, it could be said that it had its own ability. Wang Ling followed behind Zhuo. He was wearing blue tracksuits with a hoodie, and he had his hands in his pockets expressionlessly. He looked unhappy, but in fact, this was his normal behavior, and Zhuo was already used to it. The way to tell if his Shifu was angry or not was very simple. He just needed to see if his dead fish eyes had shrunk. If they did, then he was angry. If he wanted to ease his anger, he had to prepare crispy noodle snacks. For every micron that his eyes shrunk, he could use a packet of crispy noodle snacks. He couldn't give too little, and he would get arrogant if he gave too much. Zhuo felt that he was the only one who could restore his pupils to normal levels. Is the boss here? Zhuo was still wearing his usual work uniform, looking like an elite. Welcome, what would you like to buy? Our boss just went out to buy some stuff, and will be back in a moment. I'm Ling Huan. The person serving them was a shop assistant. Zhuo and Wang Ling were the first customers of the day, and Ling Huan smiled very happily. Wang Ling scanned the shop and realized that it was a shop that specialized in selling exorcism magic artifacts. There were all kinds of exorcism magic artifacts on the walls and in the cabinets. Wang Ling still remembered that at the beginning of the semester, Teacher Pan had taught them the basic techniques of summoning and exorcising spirits in Teacher Pan's Tao Talismans class. But whether it was summoning or exorcising spirits, what they had learned was just the tip of the iceberg. In Golden Core universities, there was a specialized exorcism major, and summoning and exorcising spirits were both specialized courses. We're an old shop in this flower and bird market. We specialize in exorcism, and we're honest. Let me give you a brief introduction. The shop assistant, Ling Huan, was very friendly. He pointed at the counter at the front. Do you see the peachwood sword, yellow talisman, wooden fish, and candles in this glass counter? This was used by the king of corpse controllers, Mr. Jingying, and he bought it from this shop. Although it's an obsolete product now, our shop still buys it back at a high price and displays it here as a treasure of our shop. For sale? Zhuo raised his eyebrows. Not for sale. Ling Huan shook his head righteously. The treasures of the store are not for sale. 10 million. Zhuo raised one finger. Ling Huan took a deep breath. WeChat, or Alipay? Wang Ling, Zhuo, where's your integrity? Ling Huan sighed and said with some resentment, in this day and age, it's all for the sake of making a living. If we don't have integrity, how can we survive? Other than the boss, you're the only one in the shop?" asked Audrey. He couldn't bear to dampen this shop assistant's enthusiasm, so he took out 500 HNY and stuffed it into Ling Huan's pocket. Ling Huan's enthusiasm was ignited once again, and his tone changed. "Ha ha ha. Indeed, it's just me, and I'm just looking after the shop for the boss. But I've been working for a long time. I'm the only shop assistant in the shop. Our boss is pretty busy, and usually has to do exorcism as well." Audrey nodded and directly took out a photo of Jinka from his pocket. "Have you seen this peachwood sword? 10 years ago. I bought it from your shop." Ling Huan's expression instantly turned serious. 10 years, it's already past the warranty period. Our shop has a uniform rule that products can't be returned for 10 minutes after they've been sold. If it's damaged by accident, we also have to provide proof. Proof that it was damaged by accident. Wang Ling and Audrey sucked in breaths at the same time. Profiteer. Audrey, I'm not here to return it, I just want to ask about the origin of this peachwood sword. Since it was sold by your shop, do you know where it came from? When we bought it back then, it didn't have a scabbard, and we want to find clues about it. Is that so? Ling Huan breathed a sigh of relief, but then he frowned. 10 years ago, our shop didn't have the habit of giving serial numbers to our products. Back then, everything we bought and sold was done by hand. 10 years ago, a peachwood sword like yours was a hot seller for exorcism. Back then, Mr. Zhengning created a trend for peachwood swords, and a good peachwood sword could fetch a sky-high price on the market. Do you still have that handwritten copy? I want to check it out, Audrey said. Unfortunately, there was a big fire in our shop 5 years ago, and all the handwritten purchase lists were burned. Ling Huan spread his hands and looked carefully at the photo Audrey had provided. But although this peachwood sword is old, we should still have some in our old warehouse. If you want, I can look for it. 998 renminbi for one? Audrey asked. That was 10 years ago. Ling Huan said, now it's 990 renminbi for one. Wang Ling, Audrey, Ling Huan, after peachwood swords were phased out, they're now toys for early childhood education, and are basically sold to kindergartens as educational products. They're used to cultivate interest in spirit swords for middle and upper kindergarten children. While Ling Huan was explaining the situation, a middle-aged uncle with mushroom hair stepped into the shop at that moment. He was very tall and looked like a giant bear when he stood up, and his shadow directly covered Wang Ling, boss. Ling Huan greeted the huge shadow. Seeing that the boss had returned, Audrey was just about to ask him about the situation, when the boss's expression changed drastically when he saw him. Damn! Cop! Audrey? Wang Ling, then, the boss brandished his arm like a steel cannon and punched Audrey in the face. Need help? Wang Ling stared at Audrey and spoke indifferently telepathically. How can I need Shifu's help for such a small matter? Audrey snorted and took a bow stance. The veins in his body vibrated like earthworms, and streams of spirit energy burst forth from his body to actually condense in the air into a giant raccoon. Raccoon licking dog limitless fist. The raccoon made of spirit energy stuck out its tongue and blocked the boss's fist with its tongue alone. Wang Ling stared at the raccoon in a daze, and couldn't help clapping on the side. This self-created fist technique was truly wonderful. Chapter 897. It had to be said that Audrey's wings had really hardened. This marvelous, raccoon-licking dog limitless fist left Wang Ling in a daze. After coming back to his senses, Wang Ling was in a great mood, and felt that the gloom of being bored at home during the summer vacation had been completely dispelled by this move. But there was still no expression on his face, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or sad. It could only be said that Audrey was indeed his disciple. He was indeed a promising talent, and it wasn't in vain that Wang Ling had taken him in as a disciple. Realizing that his fist had been blocked, the boss had a startled expression on his face. He had attacked first, but the other party had reacted with lightning speed, and before he could fully exert his strength, his attack had already been neutralized. Audio's real fighting strength actually wasn't as strong as the boss's, and it was purely thanks to Wang Ling updating his equipment last time. The leather gloves that Audio was wearing now looked ordinary, but they weren't. Wang Ling had made these gloves from the leather of his genuine leather sofa, which had also been enchanted. After enchantment, the leather sofa's skin had the ability to automatically regenerate, so Wang Ling didn't mind cutting off a piece to use as leather. But it took time for the leather to grow back, so Wang Ling could only cut off a piece from an inconspicuous spot, otherwise he would have been hit by Father Wang's punch. The boss broke out in a cold sweat. He had always been very impulsive, and although he hadn't succeeded in punching Audio, he knew that he had attacked a police officer. He stared at Audio with a grave expression. "Tell me, cop, how much do you want? Is there some misunderstanding between us? I'm not here for money." Audio felt that the boss definitely had some misunderstanding about him, and had actually directly called him a cop. "I know I was in the wrong, I was too impulsive just now and attacked a police officer. I'll pay you however much you want, we can settle this privately." The boss rubbed his fist. Audio sweated. "I'm not a police officer, it doesn't count as attacking a police officer." This person looked like he knew Audio, but his understanding of him was a little off. "You're not a police officer?" The boss didn't believe him. He looked Audio up and down with a suspicious expression. "You were the one who defeated the Demon King in the Demon Rampage 6 years ago, weren't you? You were the one who caught the old devil a few months ago, weren't you? The biggest dark force, Immortal Mansion, fell into your hands, and you were also the key to Evil Sword God's capture. I've seen you on TV before, so I can't be mistaken." Wang Ling, Audio, for a moment, Audio felt that he had no way of explaining himself. First of all, he really wasn't a police officer, but human. He was indeed the one who caught them. Audio dropped his forehead into his hand and felt that he couldn't explain this matter. There were too many unexplainable things these days. This was how the Yellow River was washed yellow. Sorting out his messy thoughts, Audio said awkwardly, "I'm not a police officer. I work for the General Administration of 100 schools, which is part of the Education Department. I'm not here today to pick a fight, I just want to ask about a peachwood sword sheath from 10 years ago." After saying this, Audio showed the screen of his cell phone. Staring at the screen, the shop owner thought that there would be more photos of the wooden sword, so he swiped through the screen with his finger and suddenly saw a photo of Audio with a custom-made humanoid doll, which looked exactly like the other youngster in the shop. In a daze, the shop owner seemed to understand something. He quickly swiped the photo back and pretended that he hadn't seen it. In this day and age, knowing too many secrets could kill a person. The shop owner took a deep breath and quickly changed the subject. This sword was indeed sold in my shop. I still remember it. This is the peachwood sword that sold for 998 HNY back then, right?" Both Wang Ling and Audio were stunned by the shop owner's amazing memory. This was already more than 10 years ago. "Audio, boss, are you so sure? Ling Huan said that all the receipts in your shop had already been burned." "I can't be wrong. 10 years ago, we were operating on a shoestring, and I made this sword myself. Although the receipts have already been burned, I still remember the pattern on the wooden sword." Looking at the photo, the shop owner's thoughts were a little melancholy. "Back then, this was a token of love that I gave to my fiancée. After giving her the sword, I planned to propose to her 3 days later by the Pubei River, but she didn't keep her promise. Not only that, she never showed up again." Wang Ling and Audio were silent. It seemed that this shop owner was another man with a story. "The shop owner, I remember very clearly that she didn't keep her promise, so I looked for her for a very, very long time. In the end, I gave up. Back then, I sold this sword because I was disheartened, which was why it was so cheap at 998 HNY. This sword was made of solid wood, and it was probably the best one from back then. Back then, peachwood swords sold like hotcakes. To save on wood costs, those merchants started to make hollow peachwood swords and fill them with sand. Wang Ling and Audiobook. Speaking up to this point, the shop owner returned the phone to Audiobook. Why are you asking about this sword? We want to know the whereabouts of the scabbard. I took the scabbard back then. My fiancé was a carpenter. She made the scabbard, and I made the sword blade. Together, we created this peachwood sword. Chapter 898. When the shop owner gave his name, Wang Ling realized that fate really was a very magical thing. When different people's fates were intertwined, sometimes it was really predestined. When he had named Jinka, he hadn't known what the shop owner's name was, he hadn't expected it to sound homophonic. A comedian who looked like a tea egg had once loudly berated him on a show. Homophonic jokes cost money. After confirming with the shop owner Jean Ku and Ling Huan that they would form a team of 4, Boss Jean began to explain the general outline of the modern exorcism competition and things to take note of. The two of you aren't in our line of work. Although you've more or less heard about the exorcism competition, I think you're still lacking in the details, so I'll give you a brief explanation. Mr. Jean took out his notebook. There was a PowerPoint slide in his notebook. He had done it a few times in the past to recruit his teammates. Teams of 4 were required in each exorcism competition, and they had to find their own teammates. Boss Jin's ranking in the previous competitions hadn't been very good. Although he had found a demon, he hadn't been able to destroy it in the end, and had instead helped someone else. The full name of the exorcism competition is the Modern Exorcism and Spirit Exorcism Competition. The world we live in gives birth to new demons and monsters every year. These things are either formed from resentment or complicated negative emotions. They reside in the human world and constantly affect people's normal lives. Boss Jean said, now that we live in a time of national cultivation, a foundation establishment high school student can easily take care of some earthbound spirits and simple malicious ghosts. Many professional exorcists gradually declined, which is how the exorcism competition came about. The prize pool for the exorcism competition increases every year. All participants in the exorcism competition must form a team before the competition begins. If there aren't enough people, you'll have to explain the situation to the competition team. Must there be 4 people? Audiobook asked. It's best if there are 4 people in each team. Boss Jean frowned and said, because the demons to be exorcised in the exorcism competition are very powerful. People can die. At least one of the 4 people will be a medic. Wang Ling and Audiobook. Speaking up to this point, Boss Jean slid down the PowerPoint. Every year before the exorcism competition, the exorcism competition committee will collect abnormal reports from major cities half a year in advance and compile them into data. They will list out the demons that are recognized as the most difficult to deal with in the form of a list. These demons will also have different reward points according to their difficulty. The final settlement would be based on the team as a unit. After 48 hours, the one with the highest score wins. Mr. Jean had introduced the general situation. In the end, it came down to the most practical question, which was the bonus. The prize pool for this year's exorcism competition was 1 billion. This amount of money might not mean much to many cultivators who had received it, but for the vast majority of them, 1 billion was still a lot of money, and even Wang Ling's heart itched at the sight of it. But this prize money wasn't destined to be Wang Ling's. The Wang family had 3 rules. He couldn't use any power beyond the scope of his students' abilities to win any prize money. Otherwise, Father Wang wouldn't have to work so hard writing novels, and would have become the world's richest man long ago, but he didn't lose anything. After all, working with Mr. Jean this time was a win-win situation. Boss Jean wanted to maintain the legacy of his ancestors, and Wang Ling's goal wasn't the prize money, but Jinka's original scabbard. This year's exorcism competition. The team with the highest score would receive a prize of 600 million yuan. The team with the second highest score would receive a prize of 200 million yuan. The team with the third highest score would receive a prize of 100 million yuan. The remaining 100 million yuan would be distributed proportionally to the remaining teams based on their ranking. Staring at the list, Audiobook pondered for a bit, then asked Boss Jean, can I still sign up for the competition? You can. You can sign up before the competition officially starts. But why do you ask? I'm wondering if I should get some of my friends to form a team and take the top 3 spots. Boss Jean wiped at his sweat. There are so many experts in this exorcism competition. Even if your friends come, they might not have the upper hand. After all, they aren't professional exorcists. Basically, all the teams are guided by a professional exorcist, who then use other methods to recruit the other 3 members. It's just ghost hunting. Everyone who went to university has more or less studied this subject, Audiobook said. A so-called professional exorcist is just an extra qualification certificate compared to an ordinary person. As the saying goes, a random punch can kill an old master. As long as the lineup is strong enough, nothing is impossible. In any case, the money you get in the end will all be yours. What's there to be unhappy about? Boss Jean opened his mouth, but in the end swallowed his words. He felt that Audiobook was being a little too careless. Although he was indeed very strong and had captured a lot of internationally wanted criminals, there was a saying that every profession had its own specialties, and the path of exorcism was definitely not as simple as one might imagine. Because the exorcism competition covered the entire country. After the competition started, all the teams had to look for ghosts on the national map and then annihilate them. So in previous competitions, sometimes the most difficult thing wasn't to annihilate the ghost, but to find the ghost. If you couldn't even find the ghost, what kind of guy would win the competition? What was more, these powerful ghosts were all intelligent, and would be too cowardly to come out when they encountered a powerful person. And at this time, they needed a professional exorcist to hold the fort. Professional exorcists had thousands of tricks up their sleeves. Luring demons and ghosts out was also one of their major professional skills. It's up to you. I just want to get into the top 3 anyway. Although Boss Jean didn't think much of Audiobook's suggestion, he still waved his hand and let Audiobook do as he pleased. In fact, Audiobook wasn't doing this entirely for Boss Jean. Although the Office of Strategic Deception hadn't been established for long, basically all the teams had been busy with their own things, and there didn't seem to be any team-building work. Thus, it was very important to hold a competition to adjust the atmosphere between the major members of the company and cultivate teamwork. Thinking this, Audiobook directly called grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. A few minutes later, all the members of the Office of Strategic Deception received instructions from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to divide them into groups. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Dog 2, Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo were in a group. Fang Xing, Little Silver, Ciliangenren and Immortal Toya formed a team. His goal was to take the top 3 spots. On the other side, what Wang Ling didn't know was, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji also signed up for the competition. However, the 3 of them were determined not to look for other teammates. They planned to play by themselves. Chapter 899. Sunday, August 27th. It was the 14th day of the summer break. The exorcism convention would officially start on August 28th, which was tomorrow. After Audiobook's team had been formed last night, everyone had agreed to register for the pre-competition team registration. Songhai Modern Exorcism Center was a building that looked like an ostrich's egg, and the location had been chosen very carefully. It was said that 1,000 years ago, a great ghost who had wreaked havoc in the human world had been annihilated at this exorcism center. That great ghost was prone to taking human form, and its most common disguise was as a pipe repairman. It had a special hobby of eating mushrooms, and its crime tool was a wrench. At that moment, Wang Ling and the others appeared at the entrance of the exorcism center. Wang Ling raised his eyes lazily and saw a wrench stained with green blood in a glass cabinet in the center of the exorcism center's reception hall. This was the tool that the great ghost had used back then. But for some reason, Wang Ling felt that it was familiar. Because of his work, Audiobook had actually been to the exorcism center before. When he had still been the deputy director, several small leaders who worked at the exorcism center had called him over to ask for help with their children's schooling. But rather than saying ask, it was more like blackmail, and their tone had been very unpleasant. They had even taken gifts and insisted that Audiobook accept them. Audiobook was a man of integrity, and absolutely wouldn't accept this kind of shady deal, so he had refused the parents' request on the spot. Back then, he still remembered how flustered and exasperated these small leaders had looked when he had left the exorcism center, and had even said that they would entrust friends from other departments to impeach him and remove him from his position. Who would have thought that the tables would now turn, and he would be promoted to director, and also Huaxiao Alliance's representative at the United Nations General Assembly. These small cadres from back then were no longer a threat to him at all. But it had already been a long time since that incident, and Audiobook guessed that these people had probably already been transferred out of the city, worried that he would retaliate. They waited at the entrance for a while, and a moment later, the two teams led by grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Feng Xing arrived. But there was a tacit understanding that they didn't talk to each other, and after confirming that they had arrived, they walked into the exorcism center together. Their mission was to take the top 3 spots. It would not be good if others found out that their teams were related to each other. Thus, before this trip, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared masks for everyone, including Wang Ling and Audiobook, to hide their appearances. Fatty Luo had worked through the night to make this mask. He had even added an anti-see-through layer to prevent outsiders from perceiving them with their ocular powers. The only thing that couldn't be hidden was Loopy Toad. Although Loopy Toad was also wearing a mask, it was no use. That eye-catching green fur was too eye-catching. Coupled with that wagging dog tail that couldn't be hidden, Wang Ling felt that dog too didn't even need to wear a mask. But then again, Loopy Toad had been cultivating very hard recently. He should be able to transform into a human in a short period of time. Who knew what Loopy Toad would look like when it took on a human form? In fact, it was normal to wear a mask in every exorcism competition. This was because the vast majority of people competed in small groups led by professional exorcists. Many of the cultivators in the teams were hired by the exorcists as temporary workers. Naturally, there was a need to protect one's identity. Another reason was that the exorcism competition's prize money was huge, and it was reassuring to do a good job of protecting one's identity. This mentality was like wearing a mask to receive the prize after winning the lottery. In front of the registration counter, Boss Jin's thick arm was stretched across the counter, and his voice was loud and magnetic. "I'm here to sign up. Our team, 4 people." Boss Jin wasn't wearing a mask. He was an exorcist of the older generation, and was well known in the circle. "Boss Jin, you're here to sign up again?" The lady at the front desk in charge of registration was also a veteran employee of the exorcism center. She smiled when she saw the information Boss Jin had submitted. This document contained the personal information of the 4 of them. Of course, the entire registration process was confidential. As the lady at the front desk checked the information, her slender fingers flew over the keyboard. But when she entered the 4th person's information, she was stunned. Because this was Wang Ling's information, underage? The lady at the front desk raised her head and stared at Boss Jin. For a moment, countless people around them looked at her strangely. "Boss Jin, according to the Exorcism Center's regulations, underage people can't participate. Unless they have permission from their parents or the relevant authorities." "I know." Boss Jin looked at the lady at the front desk and wiped at his sweat. "Please check the information carefully again." The lady at the front desk rummaged carefully, and in the end found that there really was information. Furthermore, it was signed by the General Administration of 100 schools. It even had the official seal of the General Administration of 100 schools. "Ah. Sorry. I didn't see it just now." The lady at the front desk hurriedly got up and apologized. A few minutes later, everyone's information had been entered. The lady at the front desk handed the information back to Boss Jin with both hands. "I wish you all a successful exorcism. Later, you will receive the latest exorcism ranking list on your cell phones, and you can discuss which demons and ghosts you want to eliminate. The Exorcism Center will send all the arrangements to your cell phones in the form of text messages. The official start time of the competition is tomorrow at midnight. Boss Jin, please lead your team and get ready." "Thank you." Boss Jin nodded. Just as he was about to collect the information, an exorcist led his team over from a distance. This was a middle-aged man who was about the same age as Boss Jean. He had a very large mole on the tip of his chin, and a few black hairs were particularly conspicuous on it. This man also wasn't wearing a mask. One look and you could tell that he was a veteran exorcist. Long time no see. How are you, Boss Jean? You lost the exorcism conventions one after another last year, and I thought you didn't have the face to come this year. As soon as this person spoke, a lot of people instantly turned to look at him. It's Mr. Fong. Mr. Fong? The runner-up in the last exorcism competition? It was obvious that this Mr. Fong was very famous here. A lot of people started to talk. Listening casually, Wang Ling realized that Boss Jean and this Mr. Fong also had a grudge. Last year, Boss Jean had been ruthlessly used by this Mr. Fong. He had found a ghost, and just as he was about to get rid of it, it had been suddenly stolen. After all, Wang Ling hadn't been involved, and didn't know what had happened last year. He didn't want to care. In any case, it was fine as long as he helped Boss Jean win the competition this year. Boss Jean couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this Mr. Fong, and just pretended that he hadn't seen anything as he directly walked out. But just as he took a step forward, he was stopped by Mr. Fong again. Mr. Fong chuckled with a provocative expression on his face. I heard earlier that there's a minor in Boss Jean's team this year. I didn't expect our Boss Jean to have fallen to the point where he has to hire child labor. As soon as he said that, before Boss Jean could reply, several powerful spiritual pressures were already pressing down on Mr. Fong from the history room. There were spiritual pressures from grenade throwing, Fong Xing, Little Silver, Loopy Toad, Odd Joie, Immortal Toya, Xilian Jinren. This was a set of spiritual pressures from every member of the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, after hearing Mr. Fong's provocation, everyone in the Office of Strategic Deception had the same attitude. They could be summed up in 7 words: those who insulted the group's favorites would be killed without mercy. Chapter 900. It wasn't just Mr. Fong. Even Wang Ling himself hadn't expected everyone's reaction to be so surprisingly uniform. At first, everyone had just wanted to put on a show of strength and intimidate Mr. Fong with a little spiritual pressure, but who would have thought that everyone's spiritual pressure would instantly stack on top of each other, directly causing Mr. Fong to foam at the mouth and faint on the spot. What an unlucky kid. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. But then he realized that his focus wasn't right. He felt that he should pay more attention to when he had become the group favorite, spiritual pressure shock injury. On the other side, the emergency medical staff who had rushed over from the exorcism center wiped at their sweat. Spiritual pressure shock injury was the most difficult type of injury to identify, so this Mr. Fong who had been shaken down could only count himself unlucky. The competition hadn't even officially started, and a strong contender for the championship had already been knocked out on the spot. Boss Jean was an impatient person, and was the kind of person who would use fists and feet to solve problems if he couldn't explain things clearly. This could be seen from the way Boss Jean had swung his fists at Odd Joie as soon as he had entered. He actually wasn't a bad person by nature. Boss Jean had offended a lot of people over the years because of his bad temper, and Mr. Fong was one of them. This had directly sowed the seeds of disaster for Boss Jean's loss in the competition last year. Mr. Fong was very vengeful. He had wanted to repeat his old trick this year and watch Boss Jean steal his kill, but he never expected to be sent straight to the hospital because of his cheap mouth. It would take at least half a month for him to recover. But after Mr. Fong's actions, the other people in the exorcism center who had thoughts about Boss Jean also curbed their thoughts. This year, Boss Jean was full of fury. The members of this small team looked much more reliable than those 3 who only knew how to watch the show last year. After registering at the exorcism center, Boss Jean gathered everyone for a meeting in the shop in the afternoon. The attractive group had sent Fong Xing as their representative, while the human beast group had sent Dog 2. Note: Human beast group, grenade throwing senior immortal, Dog 2, Dharmaraja, Fatty Luo. Attractive group, Fong Xing, Little Silver, Xilian Jinren, Immortal Toya. Boss Jean didn't know Fong Xing or Loopy Toad, so when they appeared at the door, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. Since they could come to the meeting as representatives, they should represent the combat power of the other two groups. But no matter how he looked at it, store manager Jean just didn't seem reliable. Fang Xing was too young, sunny, handsome, and simple-minded. It wouldn't be easy for him to deal with those cunning demon ghosts. As for the green-furred dog on the other side, even if it was a spirit beast, it hadn't even transformed into a human, so how strong could it be? Could it be that he was using it as a prop to show off? Boss Jean muttered to himself before taking his seat. Thank you for attending today's meeting. The main purpose of today's meeting is to distribute combat tasks. When Boss Jean spoke, everyone, including Wang Ling, was playing with their phones. Boss Jean was already used to this situation. After all, this was basically the case in all gatherings of friends these days. Friends were sitting together, but all of them were looking at their phones. Mobile phones, which carried a sense of guilt, had already added a barrier to communication between people. Many people didn't even know how to chat without their phones. At that moment, in the office of Strategic Deception's core management group, everyone was chatting animatedly. ID, dog who longs to be stroked by little master, dog 2, it's a good thing everyone isn't here. This meeting is so boring. I'm so sleepy. ID, I love broccoli, grenade-throwing senior immortal, sorry to trouble you, brother dog, to attend. After all, Boss Jean is the commander of this operation. For the sake of Lord Jinka's scabbard, let's be patient. Also, we have to give Boss Jean face and not dampen his enthusiasm as a commander. How's the meeting going now? ID, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's fanboy, Fang Xing, Boss Jean is now talking about the exorcism ranking list. This year's strongest devil, codenamed Pen Spirit, will be directly rewarded with 1 million points after killing it. Pen Spirit often appears in the Funan region, and its exact location has yet to be decided. Boss Jean says it's very ferocious and difficult to hunt down. It can hide its spirit body in any pencil, and is extremely secretive. It can kill with a pen without a sound. Devil number 2, Man-Eating Pigeon. Reward, 800,000 points. Rumor has it that this big guy was on a date with his girlfriend back then, but she stood him up. He was so angry that he died, and his resentment accumulated to become a devil. This year, more than 100 couples have already died at the claws of man-eating pigeons. Devil number 3, Lemon Essence. Reward, 500,000 points. According to Boss Jean, Lemon Essence has a powerful corrosive ability, and can even easily disintegrate the bodies of soul formation cultivators. It's really amazing. ID, I love Master, Little Silver, so these 3 devils are stronger than the prison mahjong trio? ID, Shifu is mine, Odd Joie, of course not. Most of the devils selected for the exorcism competition in previous years are very difficult to find, as they're too secretive. But to tell the truth, these 3 devils might not even be strong enough for Shifu to slap them in the face. Don't you think so, Shifu? Wang Ling didn't look at what this group of people was saying at all. He just stared at their IDs and was lost in thought. Any devil had its own fixed targets and habits when it committed crimes. For example, the people it had killed the most this year were high school students at the foundation establishment stage. Actually, it wasn't very strong overall, but it excelled at being secretive. The reason why it was at the top of the list this time was purely because the parents of the high school students who had been killed by it had joined forces to report it, pushing this notorious devil to the forefront. Fang Xing had already said in the group that man-eating pigeons' fixed targets were couples. But to be more specific, they were couples who openly showed off their affection in public. Finally, the Lemon Essence's fixed targets were successful people in society, and they would especially pick on soft persimmons to bully. For Wang Ling, these 3 devils were boring challenges. If it wasn't for Jinka, he wouldn't even bother to make a move on them. In Shop 83, Boss Jean looked at the time and said, "It's almost midnight. I've already booked tickets to Funan, so we can set off now. It's half an hour from here to the airport. The plane leaves at 2 in the morning. That brush spirit is very hard to find. I heard that a team has already arrived in Funan. We have to hurry. Next to Boss Jean, his shop assistant Ling Huan was already ready. He had all kinds of exorcism magic artifacts on him. However, the group in front of him didn't move at all, and continued to stare at their phones. What are you doing? Listen to orders. Boss Jean was anxious. Still, no one said anything. Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the time on his phone. There were 5 more seconds until midnight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moment the clock hit midnight, Boss Jean received a text announcement from the exorcism center on his phone. The devil at the top of the exorcism list, Brush Spirit, has been killed. Killing team, Team Jean Ku. 1 million points awarded. Boss Jean stared at the text message with a stupefied expression. Chapter 901. Roughly 10 minutes ago, Boss Jin's meeting had just ended, and it was 10 minutes until midnight. Wang Ling had a rough idea of the locations of these 3 devils, and had Book of Sage Immortal search for them as quickly as possible. Since enlightening Book of Sage Immortal, Wang Ling had realized that it was indeed a great help when it came to searching for information. But this thing could be spared the death penalty, but it couldn't escape punishment. Wang Ling still remembered how he had sold his own limited number of crispy noodle snacks to help Immortal Toya buy tickets. So after he found Jinka's scabbard, Wang Ling still had to give this tablet away. If he kept it by his side, it would be a disaster sooner or later. A few seconds later, Book of Sage Immortal transmitted Pen Spirit's location. As Boss Jean had said, Pen Spirit was in the area around Funan, and it was currently committing murder. In the conference room, Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell of the 3,000 great spells to quickly arrive at Pen Spirit's location. This was a boy's room. Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell to appear behind this boy, but the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware. Because Wang Ling was currently in his spirit body state. Even people from the domain of the gods like Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi wouldn't be able to see Wang Ling's spirit body state, let alone a high school student. The Great Soul Shift spell could be regarded as an advanced out-of-body spell that could teleport a soul to any location in the world. But a spirit body couldn't stay out of the body for too long, and would automatically return to the body after 15 minutes. But this was enough time for Wang Ling to get rid of Pen Spirit. This wasn't a difficult enemy to deal with to begin with, it was just that it was hard to find. At the desk, the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware that he had already been targeted by the female ghost. Pen in hand, he stared at the book and seemed to be racking his brains for a topic. Nan Nan? Nan Nan? The voice of the little brother's mother came from outside the door. She knocked first, then turned the doorknob and placed a plate of fruit next to the little brother. Seeing that her son was studying seriously, the mother smiled kindly. Study well. Nan Nan. Tell me what you want to eat. I know, the little brother replied coldly. The little brother replied coldly. Although he was looking at the book, he was sizing up his mother from the corner of his eyes. After his mother left, the flat-top little brother heaved a sigh of relief. Flipping through the book in his hand, Wang Ling realized there was actually a trap in this platform little brother's thick revision materials. That's right. A rectangular pit. The young man had placed his phone in the pit. As long as someone came by, he would close the front page of the book, and when there was no one around, he would flip it back. Wang Ling broke out in a sweat. This little brother was really going through a lot of trouble to play with his phone. He glanced at the name written on the young man's revision materials, Lin Nan. He was currently in his 3rd year of high school. The college entrance examination for foundation establishment high schools was held in October after the summer vacation, which was somewhat different from ordinary high schools. Therefore, as long as it was the summer vacation of the 3rd year of high school, the vast majority of children in foundation establishment high schools wouldn't have a very comfortable time. Putting aside the practical subjects, there was still too much theoretical knowledge waiting for them to review, and their parents usually kept a close eye on them. It was very obvious that this flat-top little brother was afraid of being nagged by his mother, which was why he had played a trick and hidden his phone in his revision materials. He wasn't taking his studies seriously at all. Wang Ling stared at Lin Nan and sighed in his heart. Play when it was time to play, and review when it was time to review. Only by striking a proper balance between work and rest could one learn more efficiently. But even so, Wang Ling wasn't Lin Nan, and it wasn't appropriate for him to comment too much. After all, everyone's situation was different, and if you weren't someone else, you shouldn't easily judge someone else. Wang Ling was very curious as to why Lin Nan had gone through so much trouble to hide his phone. Shifting his gaze, he saw that Lin Nan was talking to his father on the phone. Wang Ling saw a text message. "Dad, don't gamble anymore. Come back, Mom needs you. I got first place in my grade in the final exam, and the school specially approved a super panacea for me. As long as I sell it, I'll definitely be able to pay off your debt. As long as you promise me that you won't gamble anymore and come back to Mom to apologize, I'll sell that super panacea." He was waiting for his father's message. But his father still hadn't replied. Wang Ling's emotions were a little complicated when he read this message. At that moment, Lin Nan, who had been waiting for his father's reply, suddenly felt a chill run through his body, and he couldn't help shivering. Lin Nan picked up the air conditioner remote control on the table and glanced at it. The room temperature was currently 25 degrees Celsius. It shouldn't be that cold. But what was with that chill he was feeling? At that moment, Lin Nan didn't know that Pen's spirit had already locked onto him. In the ballpoint pen in his hand, a dark spirit body slowly extended out. It was a long-haired female ghost dressed in a red dress. She wore high heels, and the spirit that flowed out from the pen slowly gathered behind Lin Nan. Lin Nan could feel a chill on his neck, but he did not know the reason for it. When the female ghost stretched out her long nails, which were covered in red polish, toward Lin Nan's neck, Wang Ling slowly raised his hand and pressed it down on the ghost's shoulder. "You're Pen's spirit, right?" Wang Ling cocked his neck and spoke telepathically. The female ghost in red was so scared that her hair stood on end. She hadn't noticed that there was another person standing behind her at all. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. "You." The female ghost turned her head in disbelief, but she was so weak that she couldn't even see Wang Ling's spirit. However, the female ghost was very sure that there was someone behind her. Moreover, this person's hand was already one step ahead of her and was strangling her neck. "Let go," Wang Ling said coldly. This wasn't a discussion, but a pure order. Helpless, the female ghost could only withdraw her claws and raise her hands in surrender. "What kind of ghost are you?" "I'm the Crispy Noodles ghost." Crispy Noodles ghost? Pen's spirit was stunned. She had never heard of this guy before. "Why did you harm him?" Wang Ling continued to speak telepathically. He felt that he had never spoken so much in his life before. But Wang Ling himself was really curious. His gossipy heart was now purely because of that guy Dopigua. "If he doesn't study hard, of course I'll kill him," the female ghost said righteously. Wang Ling was shocked by this reason. "Also, before I kill him, I'll help him finish all his homework. I'll make everyone who doesn't study hard feel ashamed. I'll make them go to hell with regret, and..." Bang! Before Pen's spirit could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already squeezed her neck until it exploded. What a boring battle, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He glanced at Lin Nan. Before leaving, Wang Ling did something else. He cleared out all the homework that Pen's spirit had written for Lin Nan, his own homework. Write it himself. Chapter 902. All the exorcists in the exorcism competition were stunned by Wang Ling's quick action. They could see that Boss Jean was on a roll this year. Without competition from Mr. Fong, Boss Jean indeed had the potential to compete for the top 3. But the competition had just begun, and the biggest boss, Pen's spirit, had already been eliminated. This caught everyone off guard. This Pen's spirit was known as the most difficult malicious ghost to find in all these years. So, the other side had already confirmed their position long ago, and were crouching next to Pen's spirit, waiting for the competition to start and then directly eliminate it? But before everyone could recover from their astonishment, another system announcement came from the Exorcism Center. Team Jean Ku has broken the record for killing the devil at the top of the leaderboard. The time taken for this kill is 0.001 seconds. Note, the previous record was 12:21:44. This kill is valid. We also welcome all exorcists to bravely break the record. When the exorcists in various parts of Huaxiao saw this kill record, they all threw their compasses and exorcism magic artifacts to the ground with FPA. F***K. Isn't this a scam? 0.001 seconds. This is breaking your brother-in-law's new record? At the top of the Exorcism Center, President Yang Hua was on duty in his office. The giant screen in front of him was marked with all kinds of red dots, which were the exorcists who had been assigned to various regions to capture devils. When the news of Boss Jin's kill arrived, President Yang Hua was also puzzled. This had been too fast. And there was no possibility of cheating at all. President. I've already investigated the members of Boss Jin's team. Standing next to Yang Hua was a female secretary who had just investigated some information. These 4 people have very ordinary backgrounds and identities. One of them is a minor. We're still verifying the details. The truth was that when Audiobook had submitted his identity, he hadn't submitted his real identity information for fear of causing trouble. Only the age was correct in the identity information on it. In order to make his fake identity look more authentic, he had deliberately kept Wang Ling's age and added a minor to the team. You can check the information on that minor. The female secretary, that youngster's surname is Gan and his first name is Crispy. Yang Hua was blank. Why is there such a surname? What's his relationship with Gan Jiang? The secretary replied, I don't know. Okay. Then you can investigate further. If you really can't find anything, you can call Boss Jean and ask for more details. This is very important to us. The prize pool for this year's exorcism competition has exceeded all previous ones. It's all for the sake of finding a powerful exorcist who can complete one task for me. At this point, Yang Hua fell silent. The appearance of Boss Jin's team rekindled President Yang's hope. The secretary nodded. All right, Mr. President. I'll get back to work first. Yang Hua instructed, Pay attention to your privacy. Huaxiao Alliance absolutely can't know about this. The female secretary, yes. This subordinate will be careful. President Yang Hua sighed in his heart as he stood in front of the French window. Some time ago, because of a mistake in the Exorcism Center, they had accidentally loosened the seal on a 10,000-year-old devil, and in a few days, this devil would be reborn. He didn't have much time left. If Huaxiao Alliance found out about this, he might not be able to keep his position as president of the Exorcism Center. On the other hand, in Manager Jin's shop, Manager Jean received many congratulatory messages and messages from people. Old Jean. Who on earth did you recruit as a member of your team? Can you let me know? Or maybe we can work together next year. I can invest in that shop of yours. Dear old Jean. Congratulations, you've killed the Pen spirit. I've already asked you in all sincerity, so can you tell me in all sincerity who on earth is in your team? In an instant, Manager Jean received almost 100 text messages with the same content. All of them were asking about the team members and congratulating them in passing. Manager Jean sighed and felt that this scene was a little surreal. Previously, when his shop number 83 was about to close down, he had tried to borrow some money through his contact list, but none of them had replied at all. Now that the situation had changed, these people had suddenly become opportunists again. Boss Jean, aren't you going to reply? Audiobook asked. He saw that Boss Jin's phone had already entered ghost animal mode since the news of the kill had spread. The text messages hadn't stopped since the beginning, and the phone screen kept flashing and then going off. Looking at these messages, Boss Jean was clearly a little distraught, and he directly turned off his phone. Thank you very much for this time, Boss Jean said to Audiobook and the others. Boss Jean said to Audiobook and the others. As for the remaining two devils ranked second and third, boss, are you talking about the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit? Fang Xing smiled slightly. Our second and third teams have already locked onto their positions. So fast, most of these devils are spirits. As long as they're strong enough, there's no need to use a magic compass to locate them. You just need to sit at home and use your aura to get a rough idea of where they are, and then you can search for them. Furthermore, the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit aren't very strong, they're just at the soul formation stage. If it weren't for this team-building activity, we wouldn't even bother with such weak ghosts. Saying this, Fang Xing looked at the text, then raised his head and said, I've confirmed it. Sect leader said that a lot of exorcists are currently searching for these two devils, and told us to wait a while before we act. We don't want them to have a bad gaming experience and have a mental breakdown. Boss Jean and his assistant Ling Huan's jaws dropped when they heard this. This bunch of people, who on earth were they? They had thought that Audiobook of the general administration of 100 schools was already ridiculously strong, and had never expected that his friends would also be freaks. Coming back to his senses, Boss Jean wiped at his sweat. In any case, thank you very much. Also, I've already texted her about the scabbard you're looking for, and she's on her way. Boss Jean, what do you mean? Actually, I never told you before. The scabbard of that peachwood sword also gave birth to a weapon spirit, and it's a very beautiful girl. I've always raised her at home as my daughter. Everyone, little scabbard is already on her way, you'll see her in a bit. She's usually more of a homebody, but I promised her that I'd buy her a game with my bonus, so she agreed to come over. Everyone and Wang Ling. Chapter 903. It was only then that Audiobook realized that they seemed to have been tricked by Boss Jean. Previously, Boss Jean had repeatedly emphasized that the peachwood sword's origin was a token of love between him and his girlfriend, and had completely avoided talking about the scabbard nurturing a weapon spirit. Audiobook had thought that it was only because of the token of love, which was why Boss Jean had such a deep impression of the peachwood sword. After all, it had already been 10 years. But now they finally understood that this Boss Jean had been hiding a mistress in his golden house. For a moment, the room fell silent. About 10 minutes later, a white-haired girl wearing the Lu Ban skin of number 1 game pushed open the door and entered. In the end, Wang Ling saw this Miss Scabbard. She took off her hat, her eyes empty and lifeless, and the snow-white ahogue on the top of her head straightened up like a sharp sword. At first glance, Wang Ling felt that he and Jinka did indeed look like a married couple. She was about 15 years old, and a little older than Jinka. She had developed quite well, and was in all the right places, and was the right size. Dad, let me tell you something. I'll only give you 10 minutes. You can't go back on your promise to buy me a game disc. As soon as she entered, the girl sat down in a random chair with a straight face, then crossed her arms and stared at the people in front of her. She swept her gaze over Dog 2, Fang Xing and Audiobook one by one before finally fixing it on Wang Ling. After observing him for a while, she nodded. No wonder Dad's exorcism convention went so smoothly this year. These guys are indeed a lot better than last year's. Goods, the corner of Fang Xing's forehead twitched visibly. It was one thing for her to call him Goods, but she actually dared to call Wang Ling that? Audiobook wiped at his sweat and felt that this Miss Scabbard really had a fiery temper. What powerful spirit power, Dog 2 thought inwardly. Boss Jean wasn't lying to them. This girl was indeed a weapon spirit, and Dog 2 could sense that the spirit power structure of a weapon spirit was rather special. But Dog 2 had to admit that this was the first time it had seen a weapon spirit in human form, because in most cases, a weapon spirit preferred to stay in its original body. This was because a weapon spirit would consume a lot of its spirit power in its human form. But this Miss Scabbard didn't seem to care about this at all. Or perhaps it was better to say that her human form didn't seem to have any spirit power restrictions. What was going on? But Face was quite confused. Let me introduce you all. This is my daughter, Jean Baiqiao. Boss Jean wiped his sweat as he introduced her, seeming very helpless about his daughter. But Miss Scabbard frowned, as if she was very unhappy with Boss Jin's introduction. How many times have I told you? My surname isn't Jean, it's Baiqiao. Dad, please correct your position. Don't casually add a surname to me. The only reason I call you Daddy is because the name you signed on the contract is Daddy. Everyone, Boss Jean was rendered speechless by Feng Qi's retort. After a long moment of silence, Audiobook was the first to break the silence. Given Miss Baiqiao's fighting strength, if she participates in the exorcism convention, she will definitely help Boss Jean get a good ranking. This was the truth, as well as the legendary boast. After all, this was the first time they had met, and in Audiobook's understanding, it was necessary to say something nice to make people feel comfortable. But this Miss Baiqiao didn't buy it. She stared at Audiobook and chuckled. Given my strength, it's naturally easy for me to take care of those low-level devils, but they aren't worthy of me taking action. As for you, I know you're called Audiobook, right? The one who's been on TV a lot lately? Audiobook was delighted. Miss, do you know me? Of course I do, you're the king of scraps. You can fool other people, but you can't fool me. Baiqiao stared at Audiobook and snorted. But I can't be bothered to expose your little tricks. Well, water doesn't interfere with river water, and exposing you won't do me any good. You have a lot of fans now. If I expose you online, I'll be flamed. Audiobook, this second retort caused Audiobook to fall silent. Dog too couldn't take it anymore. This girl had a sharp tongue. It felt that as a loyal dog, it was time to show off the literary skills it had accumulated in the human world. Who didn't know how to insult people? But before it could speak, Baiqiao stared at Dog too. You're that demon king from 6 years ago, right? Not long after you fell down, you were punched through the stomach, and now you've turned into a spirit dog, neither a demon nor a dog. You think you've learned some human culture in the human world, and you want to cause trouble here? You stand alone in collusion, you walk alone, enlightened. You don't even know how to sing the song, Rare Words, do you? You, Buttface burst into tears and shut himself in. After rebuking the third king, Baiqiao then turned her gaze to Feng Xing. You're quite capable, but you're still lacking compared to me. I know you, immortal Shi Pai's son. Daughter? It's really giving birth to a child. Audiobook, Dog 2 and Feng Xing were stupefied. Could this girl be the legendary woman who had read the script? Finally, Baiqiao's gaze turned to Wang Ling. Don't think that I won't dare insult you just because you have a pretty boy's face and fierce dead fish eyes. Pretending to be very weak and putting on a poker face, who are you trying to show off? Don't you know how strong you are? All the strong people have gone to save the world, but you're still in high school. Wang Ling, people say you copied Nano Chi Mu. Why don't you dye your hair pink and put a lollipop in your hair? So what if you got a talisman on you when you were little? Who are you showing off by sealing the 3,000 heavenly Tao? Destroy the world if you have the ability. Don't quibble. I don't know you very well, but gossip is a fearful thing. You were in a stroller when you were born. You copied someone else's settings, and you still won't admit it? Wang Ling, forget about being in high school, there aren't many lines in the book. You can clearly speak, but you insist on using telepathy to make yourself look very low-key. So what if you know the 3,000 Great Tao? So what if you know how to cultivate? So what if you're omnipotent? You're just a guy who likes to peek behind the scenes and stir up trouble. So what if you send ellipses? I can do that too. Wang Ling. I can't take it anymore. This is too much. Buttface couldn't stand it anymore. He clapped his paw and stared at Manager Jean. Can I hit your daughter? Boss Jean smiled bitterly. Everyone, please go ahead. As soon as he said that, Feng Xing, Audiobook and Dog 2 all lunged forward. You think 3 stinky fish and shrimps are worthy of fighting me? Baiqiao sneered. At that moment, the ahog on the top of her head shone and turned into a whip of light that swept out. Mobile version, M. Chapter 904. 1 against 3 was a situation that no one present had expected. Forget her poisonous tongue, Bai Qiao's temper was far more violent than they had imagined. That long ahog swept out like a godly whip, instantly splitting Boss Jin's shop in two. Wang Ling unhurriedly pressed down on Boss Jin's and Ling Huan's heads to help them avoid Bai Qiao's attack. At the same time, he was left speechless by this kind of indiscriminate fighting style. My shop. My merchandise. My priceless exorcism magic artifact. It was a mess in front of him, and Boss Jin, holding his head, instantly turned into a world-famous painting called The Scream. Fang Xing seized the opportunity to grab Bai Qiao's ahog. He could see that this was the key to fighting Bai Qiao. As long as he could control it, Bai Qiao wouldn't be able to do anything. You're too inexperienced to control me. Bai Qiao didn't care about Fang Xing at all, however, and snorted. In the next moment, the ahog on the top of her head actually separated on its own. At the same time, a brand new ahog grew out from the top of her head. At that moment, the broken ahog that Fang Xing had grabbed earlier was vaporizing as it gradually turned into a ball of spirit energy and disappeared. Audiobook rushed forward. He was covered from head to toe in the equipment Wang Ling had given him, and his true battle strength was stronger than his realm looked. His feet shook, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Bai Qiao. At the same time, the fingerless gloves in his hands burst forth with light as he threw them at Bai Qiao. But Bai Qiao didn't even raise her eyes in the face of such a fierce attack. Too slow. Bai Qiao swung the ahog at Audiobook, and his suit was directly torn to shreds, but he wasn't injured or bleeding. A golden light completely blocked the remaining power of Bai Qiao's ahog. After the golden light dissipated, Bai Qiao saw Audiobook in bright red long johns. Just as she was amazed at the strong defense of the long johns, Dog 2 lunged at her from the other side. Basic dog skills. Hit. Loopy Toad was merciless. After a long period of cultivation, its basic dog skills had already reached the maximum level, and it could now throw 1,000 punches in a second. Bone King. The moment it used the dog skills, Loopy Toad also took out its life-bonded magic weapon and turned the Bone King into a pair of spiked gloves that were as white as jade, which it wore on its paws. For a moment, fist shadows flew everywhere, causing the air to tremble. Bai Qiao was slightly surprised at the astonishing frequency of its punches. This dog's performance was a lot better than she had imagined. It was clearly a demon king, but it was actually able to fuse with an ordinary Akita's body to this extent. Interesting. Bai Qiao smiled, and the ahog on the top of her head suddenly split into countless tiny hairs which flew out to collide with the fist shadows that filled the sky. A frightening aura and spiritual pressure emanated from Bai Qiao. Bai Qiao's expression was calm and unperturbed, and she didn't hide her insolence at all. Even when dealing with Loopy Toad, she didn't hold back at all. Like Buddha's 3,000 strands of worry, the strands of hair swung out to block all the attacks, and Loopy Toad completely lost its temper. In the end, the hair was waving faster and faster, and Buttface felt he couldn't resist it any longer. Frowning, Fang Xing's expression shook. White Knight spell. Almost instantly, Fang Xing completed his transformation, and 10 snake scales shot out to cut off all of Bai Qiao's hair. Now, Boss Jin and Ling Huan finally understood what Bai Qiao meant when she said, "Have children." It turned out this brother Fang Xing. He was a horse monkey shoju. After the transformation, Fang Xing's aura and battle strength soared to a whole new level, and Bai Qiao's expression finally changed. One punch. Fang Xing approached her so quickly that Bai Qiao was dazed. This punch smashed into Bai Qiao's body, and there was the sound of godly metal colliding. Bai Qiao was sent flying straight out of the shop. It was only at that moment that Bai Qiao's expression finally turned serious. The strongest person, sure enough, it was that youngster from inside. It was only after she was sent flying out of the shop that Bai Qiao realized that she had been dragged into a layered space at some point. This was an ability similar to the inner world, and a fight in a layered space wouldn't affect reality. None of the three people currently fighting her could do such a thing. The only person who could possibly use this divine ability was that ordinary-looking youngster in the shop. Because of her earlier mockery, Bai Qiao had a rough idea of Wang Ling's identity, which was inextricably linked to her. But Bai Qiao realized that she had still underestimated Wang Ling's strength. The moment the fight started, he had actually pulled everyone in the shop into a layered space. Furthermore, he had done it so silently that even Bai Qiao hadn't sensed it. Bai Qiao kept an eye on this kind of extraordinary ability. Qi. At that moment, Fang Xing, who had cast the White Knight spell in her goddess of war form, took out the 40-meter-long saber from the crack in her chest. When the saber was drawn, the blade shone with an astonishing light as it slashed down with powerful spiritual pressure. Bai Qiao took a deep breath, and the ahog on the top of her head split into two to turn into two giant hands that caught the 40-meter-long saber firmly in midair. However, this spiritual pressure was so enormous that Bai Qiao's body couldn't stabilize in the air, and she sank a little. But this didn't put Bai Qiao in a desperate situation. She used all her strength to move the 40-meter-long saber away. Fang Xing was stunned to find that the ahog's attack had actually cracked the saber. It's over. Bai Qiao smiled indifferently at Fang Xing, and at the same time, she took something out of her pocket. Fang Xing thought that the other party was going to take out some magic treasure, but in the end, he saw Miss Bai Qiao actually take out a bottle of hair conditioner that she had prepared beforehand from her pocket, and pour the entire bottle over her head. The nutrients in the conditioner were instantly absorbed by the ahog. In a split second, as everyone could see, the ahog on Miss Bai Qiao's head rapidly grew upward like a divine tree, and in the end, it actually turned into an ancient golden sword that glowed with magic light all over. Not good. Fang Xing instinctively sensed danger. This kind of spiritual pressure was so frightening that it was no longer the oppressive force of a true immortal. Fang Xing was well aware that he might not be able to withstand this sword. Even if he didn't die, he would be bedridden at home for half a month. Are you afraid? But it's too late. However, this Miss Bai Qiao had no intention of stopping at all. Whoosh! Brandishing the ahog, she chopped down at Fang Xing's head with the momentum of a deity splitting the sea, and the nearby space collapsed inch by inch. But in the next moment, Bai Qiao realized that her ahog godly sword was actually being held back by a force, and couldn't advance even an inch. At some point, a figure had suddenly appeared in front of her swordsmanship. It was a child who looked no more than 10 years old, dressed in brown clothes with a white robe draped over it. He had blocked her attack with just one small arm. Chapter 905. It's Lord Jinka. Zhua got excited. Everyone turned to look at the skinny figure in the sky. As always, the legendary Lord of Sword Spirits displayed his formidable battle strength. With just one arm, he blocked an attack that even Fang Xing, who was in her goddess of war form, had to admit would be hard to resist. Below, Boss Jean and his employee, Ling Huan, were completely dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why this group of people could eliminate the brush spirit the moment the exorcism convention began. That was a power on a completely different level. Boss, don't talk, I need to calm down. At that moment, Boss Jean and his employees were both taking deep breaths. Jinka's appearance in the air stunned Bai Qiao's arrogant and despotic face. She frowned and secretly exerted force, but found that her ahog divine sword couldn't advance even an inch. This child's strength was astonishing. Judging from its aura, it didn't seem to be that strong. Go away, I don't hit children. Bai Qiao stared at Jinka with a strange feeling in her heart. She was formed by heaven and earth and born of the sun and moon, so she had the power to know everything in the world. This was why Bai Qiao had the guts to lash out and ridicule everyone when she came to the shop. But in the entire process, there were two people she couldn't completely see through. One was that youngster called Wang Ling. Although her venomous tongue sounded a lot, it was in fact all on the surface. Bai Qiao didn't fully understand this youngster. And now, there was another troublesome character here. It was the child who had suddenly appeared in front of her. Bai Qiao could vaguely sense the connection between the child in front of her and her. But she didn't want to admit it. She was used to being free and undisciplined. The human world was rich and colorful, and there were so many games that she needed to play. She didn't have time to play house with a child. Follow me back. Jinka stared at Bai Qiao, and his languid tone was the same as usual. He clearly had the body of a child, but there was an unquestionable sense of dominance in his tone. Bai Qiao sneered. Don't order me around. I have a lot of games to play today. There was still much to see. My favorite author, Ku Xian's new book, The Only Koi in the Cultivation World, is going to be published today. I still have to hurry to subscribe for him. Look at him cross-dressing. Everyone present was dumbfounded when they heard such an ample reason. But in the face of this arrogant and resilient otaku, Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest from beginning to end. His gloomy gaze gave Bai Qiao goosebumps all over. It was said that spirit swords took after their masters, and Bai Qiao could see that this child looked exactly like its master, who was watching the show from below. The master was not easy to deal with, and the sword spirit was not easy to deal with either. It looks like I'll have to be a little more serious. Bai Qiao sighed in her heart, and then her expression turned serious. Treasury of hairs. In the next moment, everyone saw the Ahog divine sword in the air actually split into countless fine needles. Under Bai Qiao's control, these thousands of fine needles rained down on Jinka. All this time, Jinka hadn't let down his guard. With a flick of his sleeve, a protective sword light formed in his small hand, and this attack of fine hair, which was like a torrential storm of tang-sect pear blossom needles, was dispelled by this brown protective sword light. Zhuo couldn't help saying, judging from Miss Bai Qiao's reaction after Lord Jinka showed up, it doesn't look like she doesn't know who he is. But every move she makes is deadly, and focuses on vital parts. Down below, Zhuo, Dog 2 and Fong Xing all blushed with shame as they watched. This kind of scene of domestic violence was really frightening to watch. The needles that were like a rainstorm descended onto the ground like a myriad of shooting stars, and they blasted the ground to the point it was in a complete mess and was covered in scars. Countless houses in an area of a few tens of kilometers were instantly destroyed and smashed into pieces, and it was a horrifying scene. However, this still wasn't Miss Bai Qiao's full strength. Fong Xing was well aware that this Miss Bai Qiao's overall battle strength was above that of a true immortal. And the same was true of Lord Jinka's battle strength. This was a showdown between the sword spirit and the scabbard spirit, and it would be very hard to predict the outcome until the very last moment. But while the current situation looked blurry, it was very clear who was on the offensive and the defensive. Miss Bai Qiao's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. Their auras exploded on the field, and each blast of spirit power exploded in all directions. Everything in the wake of the ripples was destroyed, and the grass, trees, and houses were all turned to dust. It was as if the end of the world had come. Their spirit power was so powerful that it directly materialized and rushed out to destroy the grass and trees. Jinka, on the other hand, was on the defense from beginning to end. What? You're not going to attack me? Miss Bai Qiao laughed wildly. Suddenly, she was enjoying the feeling of fighting a little. She had been cooped up at home for too long, and it wasn't bad to come out and exercise every once in a while. She originally didn't want to be too heavy-handed with a child, but for some reason, Bai Qiao actually felt that the more she fought, the more exciting it became. She didn't know when it had started, but she couldn't take her eyes off Jinka. As the battle progressed, a strong obsession kept lingering in her mind. Wang Ling could actually understand this kind of scenario very well. It was like when you were at school and your female deskmate kept trying to pinch your thigh. You thought she was bullying you, so you went to tell the teacher. The truth was that the girl liked you, but didn't know how to express it in words. It was like the boy in the back row always grabbing the girl in the front row's pigtails. Thus, most straight men would lose a beautiful relationship after their thighs were pinched, and now, Bai Qiao's feelings couldn't be any worse. The more she fought, the more she wanted to bully him. A hogue, throw up. Bai Qiao was brimming with fighting spirit. She extended her a hogue infinitely, wrapping Jinka up in layers. Then, like a rocket, the ahogue on the top of her head directly sent Jinka, who had curled up into a ball, into outer space, where it circled the earth several times in a row. In the end, he turned into a meteor and crashed down hard. Not good. Fang Xing realized that things weren't looking good. If this meteor crashed down, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. But at that moment, Jinka's aura finally emerged, and a powerful gravitational force came from the dumpling wrapped in a hogue. Everyone had no time to react at all. On the other side, Bai Qiao was already sent flying with a blood-curdling ayah. When everyone came back to their senses, Bai Qiao's two pure white legs were already firmly on Jinka's shoulders. Ah Jua, this is Jinka assassinating King Qin? Dog 2 didn't quite understand. But Miss Bai Qiao isn't the person with the most hair. No, Fang Xing shook his head and gave an aggressive analysis. The reason why Miss Bai Qiao's ahogue can extend infinitely is very likely because it absorbs nutrients from the other hairs on her body. Thus, Lord Jinka deduces that ahogue is also related to her leg hair. Furthermore, after the ahogue extends infinitely, it's already longer than all of us here. All of our leg hair put together isn't as long as one of Miss Bai Qiao's ahogue, right? Everyone was stunned. There was this kind of operation. Chapter 906. For any girl, it was an extremely humiliating thing to have both of her thighs carried by a man. Miss Bai Qiao was naturally the same. She already had no time to worry about the fight, and covered her face with both hands, completely at a loss. The last person who had shown this expression had been the scholarly girl by the riverbank. At that moment, their postures and expressions almost overlapped across time and space, and Wang Ling couldn't help secretly clapping his hands in amazement at the sight. It was very clear that Miss Bai Qiao had lost because she was a scabbard. As a scabbard, she and Jinka came from the same source, and her true battle strength was about the same as Jinka's. But as a scabbard, Miss Bai Qiao had forgotten her identity as a scabbard. A scabbard existed to protect the sword itself. But Miss Bai Qiao had just gone berserk from the fight, and had put the cart before the horse as she actually wanted to press the sword under her body. Jinka had no choice but to activate his passive skill, Jinka assassinates King Qin. This move had actually existed from the very beginning to limit the scabbard's strength. The layers of space dissipated, and everything nearby returned to normal. The broken world returned to normal the moment the layers of space were lifted. It was as if nothing had happened. The shattered ground and the smell of smoke from the battle had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Miss Bai Qiao hugged her knees as she crouched in a chair. She wasn't noisy anymore, and had already lost her initial arrogance. She just pulled the cap on her head very, very low, and started to sob rhythmically. Woo. Woo woo. Woo 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 woo. Woo 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 woo. Although she was sobbing, Miss Bai Qiao didn't shed a single tear. Is Miss Bai Qiao trying to say something? Ah Jua scratched his head. He suspected that she wasn't crying at all, but was trying to express something. Who would cry with musical notes? It was like Morse code. No, this was the Morse sword code. Standing next to her, Jinka translated expressionlessly. She said that she has no face to see anyone. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Dog 2, woo ah. Woo ah. Woo ah ah. She said that even if she was beaten to death, or jumped down from here, she wouldn't be my scabbard. Woo ah ah. Ah. Woo 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 ah ah ah. She said that love between an older woman and a younger man won't end well. In fact, this wasn't the first time Miss Bai Qiao had cried. She was usually like this when Boss Jean didn't buy games for her. But Boss Jean didn't understand a single word of Miss Bai Chao's Morse sword code. In the end, despite Bai Chao's special background, she was still a little girl. Under normal circumstances, when a young lady cried, there was usually a hidden meaning in it. However, this was not the way to go on. They couldn't get any information, and naturally couldn't understand this Miss Bai Chao's heart. The only thing he knew was that Bai Chao still missed city life, and wasn't willing to go back to being a well-behaved scabbard. They had painstakingly searched for the scabbard because they wanted the scabbard back. But you can't use force on a girl. These were all consensual matters. Miss Bai, if you keep crying like this, only Lord Jinka will understand. You have to calm down, then tell us what you want and we'll think of a way to solve it together, Audiobook said earnestly. Then, he pushed Feng Xing over. Feng Xing? Audiobook said telepathically, classmate Feng Xing. Lord Jinka's happiness is also related to Shifu's happiness. Little girls like you the most when you're a man, so we're counting on you. To be honest, Feng Xing had refused at first. He was actually quite a vengeful person, and had been very unhappy with Bai Chao's mockery of his gender earlier. The White Knight spell was his father's unique secret technique, and he had no choice but to change gender after using it. But Bai Chao had actually used this to personally attack him, which directly caused Feng Xing's impression of this Miss Bai Chao to turn negative from the very beginning. But Audiobook's words reminded him. Swords follow their masters. Since ancient times, spirit swords and their masters had been inextricably linked. It was like the personal maids of noble ladies in ancient times. Ladies naturally had to be concerned about their maids' happiness. If their maids were doing well, the ladies would also be happy. So, this was all for Wang Ling's sake. Thus, Feng Xing took a deep breath and decided to brace himself. Miss Bai Chao, if there's anything you're unhappy about, you can tell me. My chest is all for girls to lean on. Feng Xing flipped his beautiful blonde hair and then held out a hand to Bai Chao in a very gentlemanly manner. After a few minutes, Bai Chao stopped sobbing. She looked up at Feng Xing, her eyes empty. Everyone was overjoyed at this scene. It had actually worked. When all was said and done, she was still a girl. Audiobook was secretly delighted. Just as he was sighing in his heart that Feng Xing was worthy of being a girl killer, Bai Chao suddenly swatted Feng Xing's hand away. F***CKU. I don't talk to dead ladyboys. Feng Xing, I'll F***CKU, classmate Feng Xing, calm down. Audiobook hurriedly stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Feng Xing's waist. Let go of me. I'm going to have a showdown with her today. Everyone knew that at that moment, Feng Xing's heart was on the verge of collapse. Everyone had their own pain. Feng Xing himself was helpless in his own pain. After all, this was something his father had left him. For a moment, the room fell into silence. Bai Chao knew she had said the wrong thing, and buried her head in her knees again. Just as Boss Jean had said, Bai Chao had been raised by his side all these years, and was already used to being free and undisciplined. Furthermore, it was said that this venomous tongue had been stimulated by her noob teammates when she had been playing games. So much so that her venomous tongue had already become a habit of hers. Calling her a dead ladyboy was indeed too much. But in fact, it was unintentional. She just didn't want Feng Xing to get close to her. Who would have thought that she would blurt out the word dead ladyboy? Miss Bai Chao, things have already come to this point, so why don't you be straightforward? What other wishes do you have? Audiobook stared at Bai Chao and said, actually, your return doesn't mean that you'll lose your freedom. You can still play the games you want. No one will restrict you. But you can't forget that you and Lord Jinka are one. Can I have any wish? Any wish? Audiobook nodded. Bai Chao raised her head and instantly perked up. I want to develop a game. Chapter 907. Bai Qiao's wish was unexpectedly unique, but it wasn't impossible. After the exorcism convention, Boss Jean received a huge bonus. He was exceptionally good to his wild daughter, even if in Bai Qiao's eyes, this daddy Boss Jean was nothing more than a tool for her to enjoy herself. After discussing the conditions, Bai Qiao and Wang Ling signed a new agreement. As long as Wang Ling could fulfill her wish to develop a game, Bai Qiao was willing to return. But now, there was another problem. Everyone here was made for playing games, not making them. Not only did games need to be creative, they had also been progressively stricter in recent years. A lot of new games couldn't even get approval from the relevant departments, and in the end ended up rotting in the hands of the game companies themselves. The result of such a huge investment was that the game couldn't even be sold. For a moment, game companies large and small in the market were in a predicament. Thus, the problem was what type of game to make. The MOBA games that had always dominated the top of the list were dominated by large game companies such as Horse Goose and NetHard. If they developed a similar type of game, it would be very difficult to get a slice of the cake from these game companies. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the game was really excellent, small game companies couldn't compare to these established companies in terms of server operation and maintenance alone. Once a large number of users poured in, the servers would most likely blow up. But Bai Qiao already had her own ideas about game design. If a new game wanted to find its place in the monopolized game market, creativity was the key factor. It was August 29th, the 16th day of the summer break. Wang Ling's room was unprecedentedly lively as a lot of people came. Wang Ming, who had been oppressed in the lab by Zhai Yin for a long time, also came, but it wasn't Wang Ming himself, but the long-range mecha armor he was controlling, Wang Ling too. After the last trip to Beast King's remains, the newly developed Wang Ling 2 had already been upgraded and improved on the basis of Wang Ling 1. Not only could it be controlled remotely for combat, it could also be recalled with one click to merge with the original body. The most important thing was that Wang Ling 2 had basically turned into an artificial intelligence and had its own consciousness. In other words, Wang Ling 2's function was now infinitely close to that of the high-level clone, Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch, which Wang Ling had created with the Great Separation spell, and its memories would also be synchronized with Wang Ming's brain. The only difference was that Wang Ling 2's fighting strength wasn't as strong as Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's. In the room, Dog 2, Jinka, Little Silver, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling 2 formed a circle around Bai Qiao. "Tell me about your design first, then leave the rest to me," Wang Ling 2 said, the synthesized voice of the virtual human with Wang Ming's distinct voice. "I want to design a sandbox cultivation simulation game with a high degree of freedom." At the mention of the game, Bai Qiao's expression lit up, and her eyes lit up. "I'm going to call this game Cultivation Simulator. The characters, spells, cultivation techniques, magic artifacts, including the world itself, can all be designed on their own. What the players have to do is not to manage the characters, but to manage the entire world. They have to consider the balance of the various forces in the world and maintain the order of the world itself, so that the world they create can achieve sustainable development. This is the key to this game." "So, the key to the game is to operate the entire world? Is there a pay-to-win mechanism?" Little Silver asked. As a fellow gaming fan, Little Silver had been living at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house for the last few months, and had played all the games on the leaderboard and all the ones that could be played with pay-to-win. What Little Silver abhorred the most was that Dungeon and Devils on Earth. This game's weapon-strengthening mechanism really left Little Silver speechless. He had even thrown in the money for takeout, but couldn't upgrade it no matter what. Later, Little Silver had watched videos online and realized that those who had successfully upgraded their weapons cout out as they did so, and used their foreheads to click the mouse to show their sincerity. Pay-to-win doesn't exist. This is an absolutely fair game. But in order to set up a profit point, you can make some clothes to sell. Can wearing clothes increase your attributes? For example, 10 attack points? Little Silver raised his hand and asked. "No." Bai Qiao shook her head resolutely. "Then what about power struggles?" "This will happen naturally after you design the world's parameters and basic characters. For example, you can set up how many major forces the world will be divided into, how they will be distributed, and so on. But the composition of the forces and the scale of their construction will depend on the character parameters. Each character's talent, attributes, personality, and so on. Players can freely design them from the start. In the preset world, these characters will develop freely according to their attributes and personalities, and finally form their own forces according to the preset script. All of this can't be controlled. You need to set up a good personality at the beginning. Can we set up a world without evil people? Dog 2 asked. Yes. In this free cultivation world, the players were God. If you want to set up a perfect world without evil forces, that's naturally not a problem. But whether such a world could continue to operate in the end was a problem. Everyone has heard the story of the catfish and the sardines, right? Civilization grows in strife. Without pursuit and desire to change, the world itself won't progress, Bai Qiao said. Wang Ling too nodded. I more or less understand what you mean, but sandbox games also need a template and some basic programming parameters. I need some real data to use as a reference. Right after Wang Ming said this, before Wang Ling could say anything, Book of Sage Immortal suddenly said, I've calculated that there's a 98% chance that my lord will have me find a suitable world for simulation. Wang Ling, can you do it with this heavily corrupted tablet? Bai Qiao's eyes sparkled. Yes, Miss Bai Qiao. It's very simple. Book of Sage Immortal replied. Book of Sage Immortal then projected an image of an earthy blue planet. These are the parameters of Earth from the 10th universe 600 million years ago. Now, Miss Bai Qiao, you can create your character. I'll use the current development of the 10th universe to make calculations and simulate future developments. It's not just Miss Bai Qiao, everyone else here can try to create your own characters. Let's see what kind of impact they'll have on the world in the future after they've been created. Saying this, Book of Sage Immortal turned its gaze to Wang Ling. My lord, do you want to create the first character first? Book of Sage Immortal was well aware that its master was, after all, Wang Ling. Giving its lord priority in creating a character was equivalent to giving him face, and there was a 78% chance that he wouldn't smash it. Chapter 908. Funding and setting up a server weren't a problem. As for the specific design of the game, Wang Ming would rearrange the structure and algorithm of the entire game based on the parameters recorded in Book of Sage Immortal Simulation Experiment. This was just a game. Over the years, Wang Ming had created so many strange magic treasures, and even the humanoid magic treasure Head of State 001, which was used in battle, had been created by him. The difficulty of designing these scientific cultivation magic treasures was far higher than that of a game. After confirming the general direction, the simulation experiment became the most important factor. Wang Ling stared at the image projected by Book of Sage Immortal and fell into deep thought. To be honest, he still hadn't thought about what kind of person he wanted to build. At that moment, Wang Ming, who was remotely controlling Wang Ling too, suddenly said, "It seems that Ling Ling is still thinking. Should we redefine the world first? What kind of world is the 10th universe?" Book of Sage Immortal replied, "There are subtle differences between each universe, and cultivation civilizations are uneven. But most of them have already entered the era of national cultivation." The era of national cultivation. This phrase sounded very lofty, but if one were to look back tens of thousands of years, this was simply unimaginable. The first person in the universe to discover the existence of spirit chi and turn it into spirit energy to embark on the path of cultivation was the father of cultivation. Rumor had it that the father of cultivation was also the discoverer and developer of the 3,000 great spells. However, historians had always held different views and debated endlessly who the father of cultivation was. A small number of historians even believed that there was no such thing as a father of cultivation at all. Cultivators had existed since the beginning of the universe. But they were a very small group of high-level people who kept a low profile and passed on the art of cultivation from generation to generation. It wasn't until the study of cultivation gradually expanded bit by bit and the ranks of cultivators continued to grow that the world finally entered the era of national cultivation after tens of thousands of years. In fact, both theories had their own arguments. Wang Ming, on the other hand, believed in the father of cultivation. Above true immortal was true venerated, above true venerated was venerated immortal, and above venerated immortal was Tao venerated. Then what about above Tao venerated? Could there be a higher realm? In that case, could the person with the strongest realm be the legendary father of cultivation? Or perhaps this father of cultivation wasn't the father of cultivation at all. Perhaps he could also be called an immortal king? Wang Ming smiled. Since the 10 universes have already entered an era of universal cultivation, can we establish a world with very few cultivators? This question caused everyone present to be stunned. A world with few cultivators? What does Brother Ming mean? He asked. It's a world dominated by ordinary people. Cultivators only occupy a very small proportion of this world. Moreover, there is an agreement among cultivators that they cannot reveal their identity as cultivators in front of ordinary people. If they violate the agreement, they will suffer the wrath of heaven. Wang Ming said, "Everyone, just think about it. If such a world existed, wouldn't cultivators living in the cracks eventually replace ordinary people and lead the world into an era of national cultivation? So, this is another spiritual energy revival theme. No, the spiritual energy of the world has always existed, and so have the cultivators. What I want to know is, if 99% of the people in the world are ordinary people and only 1% are cultivators, will this 1% completely replace the other 99% in time?" Wang Ming said. This question caused Wang Ling's room to fall silent for a moment. It was Miss Bai Qiao who suddenly laughed. She hadn't thought about this before. As a sandbox simulation game with a cultivator as the theme, Cultivation Emulator allowed players to freely create a world of cultivators, and indeed allowed for this kind of situation. Who said that cultivators had to be the dominant force at the beginning of the world? Bai Qiao thought this proposal was very interesting. This sounds like a very interesting world. In any case, it's just a simulation. Maybe we can give it a try. Then, let's try to set up the parameters of the world. So, is this the world I imagined? Wang Ming also laughed. That's right, the parameters of the world have to be designed from the very beginning. For example, the ratio of cultivators to ordinary people, the ratio of men to women, the initial population of the world and so on. After the most basic parameters are set, the game officially begins. After receiving the first instruction, Book of Sage Immortal immediately started its own simulation settings. After Book of Sage Immortal compiled the parameters of the world, it displayed them in front of everyone. World, a barren world of cultivation, age of the world, 4.8 billion years, ratio of ordinary people to cultivators, 99%/1%, civilization state, modern civilization, education level, 9 years of universal compulsory education, world state, peaceful development, power number, 1231, Book of Sage Immortal. Now, you can design your own characters. These people will be born in this world, but how long they can live and how much impact they can have on the world will depend on their specific applications in the world. After that, a chart of the character's attributes appeared in front of everyone. These were the basic attributes, which could be changed freely. Furthermore, the appearances of these characters could all be set by molding their faces. Looking at Jinka's appearance, Bai Qiao made a character that looked similar, but it was a girl. It's done. A cross-dressing version of Jinka. Hiya. Miss Bai Qiao was very pleased with herself. Wow. It really looks like him. Audra praised. But Miss Bai Qiao, it looks like you and Lord Jinka gave birth to you. Bai Qiao's face instantly turned red. Who gave birth to him? She grit her teeth, made the character's hair a little longer, and then added a hogue on top of the character's head. She then quickly corrected herself. It doesn't look like him. I'm molding myself. And so, Bai Qiao's character was as follows: name, Bai Ge gender, female intelligence growth, 8/10 endurance growth, 8/10 defense growth, 8/10 strength growth, 8/10 figure growth, 10/10 appearance growth, 10/10 kindness points, 10/10 evil points, 0/10 personality. Silly, why are they all 8 except for appearance and figure? Dog 2 asked. I already said that I'm molding myself, so of course I have to look like me in appearance and figure. As for everything else, I'm the best. I definitely can't be stronger than the me in other worlds. Everyone. What kind of character does Master want to design? Little Silver asked curiously at that moment. Looking at the character panel, Wang Ling had a rough idea of what to do. He started to design his own character. Name, Qin Zong. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.